there have been signals from the White House.
Right. Well, I mean, who knows? I think obviously we'll speak to those issues. But I think the reality is that it's been a year. There's been no progress on those issues. And there really can't be progress on those issues when we're in an environment where we're not respecting the rule of law, we're not respecting the democratic process, because you can't do these things by fiat. And so there's no path for Trump right now, or the GOP, frankly, to make progress on health care, on housing, on child care, senior care, et cetera.
Lisa, I'll let you go listen to the speeches. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Right,
I appreciate it. So, as I said, Ian, earlier there were a couple of events throughout the city. Even as we were coming here to this event, we were passing a bunch of people who were protesting about the Epstein files just a couple of blocks back. So there are sort of staged protests throughout the area. There are at least 24 Democratic lawmakers who have skipped the event inside and have chosen to be out here in the cold or at other events around D.C. today.
Yeah, and a quick follow-up. How would you describe the mood, the energy there right now?
I mean, this is a city that's no stranger to protests. There's a lot of people who come who are very civically engaged. There's quite a bit of anger here. Quite a lot of older folks as well who have come out here with signs talking about sort of their history of protest or activism, people going back many years, Carter even. So it's been interesting to hear from people about sort of what they're feeling that in this moment in history, why it was important for them to be here, because they're saying they can't really remember an administration like this or a State of the Union like this where so many people peeled away and chose not to be, as Lisa said, inside the chamber, listening actively to what the president was saying.
Carter, that was a long time ago, 50 years ago. So, yeah, that is quite a diverse crowd when it comes to ages. Katie Nicholson live at the U.S. National Mall in Washington. Thank you. Now we have a panel standing by to share their analysis through the night. Matthew Bartlett is a Republican strategist and a former Trump appointee to the State Department. Joel Rubin is a Democratic strategist and a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the Obama administration, also the author of the briefing book on Substack, and they'll both be with us through tonight's coverage, including after the speech. I want to start, first of all, by thanking both of you for doing this, but also asking both of you about your expectations for tonight. Matthew, beginning with you.
Well, a pleasure to join you. I'm from New Hampshire, so I know Canada is our good neighbors to the north. And while our governments may have some disputes, certainly our people continue on our wonderful friendship. Yeah, we are a house divided, a country divided, and now 1 year in, it seems as if everything has changed but the economy. So now President Trump will be heading into the State of the Union with some of his biggest strengths, not just the economy, but also immigration, now liabilities. We'll see what the speech lays out. Obviously, there's critical domestic, international policy and politics now combined, not just with his personality, but with the partisan theatrics of this speech.
And Joel, what are you expecting tonight?
Well, Ian, it's great to be with you with my friend Matt, and also shout out to Canada. I spent many summers as a young man there in Ontario and love the country very much. I honestly expect tonight to reflect what we've seen over the last year, which is high costs, lots of corruption, and tons of chaos. And it's going to be a very costly speech to the American people because the president, for example, is going to say that he's going to continue to tax us, even though the Supreme Court ruled his tariffs as illegal. He's going to continue to be corrupt and pocket money from foreign governments and others, even though he's violating multiple statutes and the Constitution. And he's going to continue with the chaos in our streets and allow ICE agents to be masked and threaten our neighbors and our allies. Greenland comes to mind, as well as Canada. And I think we're just going to see those themes throughout the speech. And it's going to be one that is a true Donald Trump speech, just like this first year of his presidency has been.
As we speak to both of you, we are occasionally looking at some live shots as people arrive to hear the State of the Union address. Matthew, You know, I listened to what Joel went through there, and strong language from him, but, you know, factually, there's a lot of, you know, it kind of covers a lot of stuff that's been happening. And while Trump's approval ratings have gone down, I see in a lot of polls they're still around 38, 40, sometimes 42%. What does that say about where the president is politically if there's still that many Americans, 2 out of 5, who still say that they approve of his presidency?
Again, we are bitterly divided. And while Trump continues to sag in the polls, his approval rating among Republicans continues to be sky high. Again, this is a tale of two countries, if you will. A notion that we have saved our country from the previous 4 years, that we are on a road to recovery, and that there's an appreciation for a president who's present, I would say, juxtaposed to the last 4 years. So Republicans are quite happy where we are and excited about the future. Obviously, conversely, Democrats have never been so powerless, maybe arguably hopeless, certainly until the midterms, maybe. But it just shows just how vastly different, you know, tens of millions of people view politics in our country, as well as this president. You know, how crazy are these times? Historically, the tariffs, which was just shot down by the Supreme Court, has been a Democratic protectionist policy, never been Republican orthodoxy. Now you have Democrats, like my good friend Joel, talking about how taxes end up being passed on to the public, and they sound like free traders and against taxes. As a conservative, I welcome much of this approach. But again, Donald Trump has turned politics upside down, came in after winning every swing state, the popular vote, yet seems to have focused on everything but the priority around the economy. What brought you to power can easily drive you out of power. I think the speech will continue to illustrate his personality. It seems as if some of the backdrop will be on America 250, patriotism, stories from the public, but I'm not sure many minds will be changed.
We are live here on CBC News Network and other CBC platforms, and in an hour from now, we'll be watching President Donald Trump as he begins the State of the Union address. Joel, this is an opportunity for Trump to outline his priorities for the year ahead. What do you see as the priorities for the American people?
Yeah, you know, Ian, the priorities are to what Matt just said. The economy. Democrats have run on the word affordability over the past several months. I think that's a word that, while President Trump hates to use it, he has to acknowledge that it's a highly effective term. And in fact, in the past year, what we've seen is that independents are flocking to the Democratic side of the ledger. And so while the president is popular in his base, he's not only amongst Democrats, but also amongst independents. And that's where the votes are, and that's where the victories are. And that's where maintaining the House for Republicans lies. And so if he doesn't speak to the base, I'm sorry, not just to the base, but also to the broad middle and independent voters, his whole agenda may go up in smoke within a year. And I think that's why he has to make sure he focuses on that. I just don't know if he's going to bring any new proposals to the table that really speaks to the crunching bills that people are facing, from energy to healthcare. We saw record high firings last year. We've seen costs spike due to the tariffs. And so he has to explain how he has an economic policy just days after the core of his economic policy was thrown out by the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and Matthew, let's pick up on that. I don't know if the average American cares or even knows a lot about tariffs, but I'll tell you, in Canada, everybody does. It has upended many sectors of our economy, hurt a lot of companies, and our government, federal government, is kind of rethinking trade with not just the United States, but other countries around the world. And then you have the Supreme Court of the United States with its rebuke to Trump on tariffs, and then he doubles down right after that, saying he's going to use a different law to impose new tariffs, 10%, maybe 15%. Do you think he's going to talk tariffs tonight? And does it even matter, as he speaks primarily to a domestic audience?
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump has been the most inconsistent president or politician we have ever had in American politics, in history. Yet the one thing he's been consistent on is tariffs. Since the 80s, he views this as a diplomatic tool, as a trade tool, as a deficit reduction tool. And candidly speaking, the notion of tariffs has been quite popular. Again, a weird, almost bipartisan approach. It's not free trade, it's fair trade. Yet the implementation has certainly been noticed with prices, with allies. Now the Supreme Court, I would argue, has thrown the economy something of a life preserver. The president seems to be refusing and demanding an anchor. So I would expect that he will continue on this trajectory of economic populism, specifically around tariffs. But as Joel said, many of these issues, groceries, electricity, education, healthcare, these were persistent. This is what brought the Republicans back to power, yet there are no true answers in terms of remedying this. Candidly speaking, what brings down prices? Economic destruction. We do not want that. We do not want that demand to die. So it's an incredibly challenging plague that now is Donald Trump's headache. The policy proposals are one thing, but how you message it. Trump is very good at messaging anger and rage. He is not good at understanding, acknowledging the economic pain. We'll see if he can do that tonight, but he's a rare bird, but I'm not sure if he can change his old dog ways.
And Joel, as we've been watching people getting ready for the State of the Union address, momentous and I'm sure for some people exciting night in Washington. There are some prominent Democratic lawmakers who say they're not going to be there. There is that alternative People's State of the Union event happening at the Washington Mall. As a Democratic strategist, Joel, how do you feel about that alternative event?
Yeah, you can call me old school. I don't like it. I don't like members of Congress boycotting speeches of the duly elected president of the United States. He won the election. He got the popular vote. That doesn't mean the Democrats have to like what he says, and I don't think most will. But this is a bigger than just a politician and somebody who's standing from the dais. This is about the country. And throughout all the tumult that we've seen over the past year, we have to make sure that our elected leaders are continuing to fight to keep us together. And so I think it's a bad message to the country. And there are many different ways to broadcast dislike and anger at Donald Trump, but not showing up, I think, is a mistake.
I love the fact that both of you have signaled to our audience that, first of all, you know what you're talking about when you analyze what's happening. Secondly, you're not just blindly partisan. You're saying some things that, maybe you might not expect a Republican and Democrat to say, which is great. And you seem to be friends, so that's even better. We can be civil and have some really good analysis through the evening. Republican strategist Matthew Bartlett and Democratic strategist Joel Rubin will be joining me through this evening, including after the speech, to share their thoughts and analysis. Thank you, gentlemen.
Pleasure.
Thanks much.
Let's take a look at the White House. We're expecting Donald Trump to leave for the Capitol very shortly. We've been told it's going to be a long speech tonight. He is expected to touch on his key political themes: the economy, foreign policy, tariffs. We know some of the guests we're expecting to see in the audience. Sarah will be here soon to explain why those guests are sometimes used to score political points. That's going to be after the break on CBC News Network. We're looking at Capitol Hill, where President Donald Trump set to give his State of the Union address. It is scheduled to start shortly after 9 p.m. Eastern, so just over an hour, or just under an hour from now. This comes as tensions between Canada and the U.S. are, as you know, high, and we do expect Trump to talk about tariffs and certainly about the economy. So let's turn to CBC's chief political correspondent, Rosemary Barton. And Rosemary, some of our viewers might be wondering, why should Canadians be following Trump's address this evening?
Yeah, especially if it's going to be an awfully long one, as we expect, Ian. I mean, as we all know, anything that Donald Trump says or indicates or hints at has an effect, a direct impact potentially on Canada, indirect to say the least, and could go so far as to, shake up sort of the state of the world as it stands now. Just think about the past, 10 days or so, the things that Donald Trump has threatened or talked about. The Gordie Howe Bridge, trying to shut that down entirely, the bridge between Windsor and Detroit. He's talked obviously about tariffs. He went after Canada for not allowing Gulf Stream planes to be allowed into Canada. And of course, he criticized the Prime Minister after he made that speech in Davos, where he talked about the New World Order being upended and pointed to unreliable trading partners like the United States. That was the first time that President Trump called the Prime Minister governor. So there are a myriad of ways that this speech could go, but all of them are things that this country and this government will have to pay attention to.
Like with other presidents, with previous presidents, the Canadian government would feel fairly confident that there wouldn't be a huge surprise during the State of the Union address. Conversely, I assume, but you tell me, that the Canadian government is probably watching this very closely, not really sure what to expect.
Yeah, and not saying very much today either, Ian, in terms of what they are expecting. A couple things. First of all, they will expect, of course, trade to come up, particularly given the president's reaction to that Supreme Court decision on Friday. And even though that 15% global tariff that Donald Trump is threatening has not a huge impact on Canada, it's really the sectoral tariffs that affect Canada the most. They will be watching to see if he hints at what his tariff approach will be going forward, because as you know, he's got a couple other mechanisms to put in place, broad-ranging tariffs, and will Canada get caught up in any of those? Will the president talk, Ian, about CUSMA? That review has to be done by July 1st. We heard from Dominic LeBlanc today that he plans to meet with the Trade Secretary sometime next week, but we don't really have an indication at this stage about what the president's intentions are on CUSMA, so it'll be interesting to see whether that gets mentioned. I think also, though, to watch for any of his language around Mexico, because Canada has started to sort of rebuild that relationship. China, India, anywhere else, really, that Canada is focusing its attention. The Prime Minister just happens to be leaving on Thursday for a trip to India, Australia, and Japan. And that is about Canada trying to bulk up its relationship with the Indo-Pacific region, knowing that it can no longer wholly rely on the United States. So any kind of indication about how the president is going to deal with some of those countries could have a direct impact on this country as well. And the government will be listening closely to that. And then, finally, I think, Ian, they'll just be listening to see if he takes any shots at Canada, whether it be the 51st state, the governor comment, whether it be a cheap shot about hockey. All those things are something to note, because it shows that this continues to be an ongoing source of irritation for the president. And given that we've got so much riding on that CUSMA review, all those things will be noted. Whether or not anyone in the Canadian government will react to them or respond to them, I think, is another question, because right now the strategy seems to be, let's slow roll this. The government knows that Donald Trump's polling numbers are bad. They know that Americans don't like tariffs. They know that the economy is not going well and that the midterms are coming. So all of those factors allow the Canadian government to sort of just try and wait some of this out.
Was a better show when we have the political analysis of Rosemary Barton. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ian. Appreciate it.
So, as we've mentioned, one of the things we'll be looking for tonight, not just the content of the speech, but who is in the audience. Both parties use this event to try to make a political point or two or three, and guests can help them do that. And Sarah's been looking into this.
Yeah, so Ian, in terms of what to expect, I just want to quickly pick up on what Rosemary's talking about. And we have all been talking about what will Donald Trump be saying and what points will he be referencing in the State of the Union? We do just now have a bingo card that has been called the State of the Union bingo card that has been put out by the White House. This is appearing on social media. And so it gives you an indication of probably what Donald Trump is going to be, some phrases he'll probably use, themes that he will be talking about. I mean, they have put it on the bingo card. Some of these points are pretty derogatory toward the Democrats, but other of them talk about the First Lady appearing more beautiful or more stunning than anyone else in the gallery, that the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, may be getting another job, as well as a number of phrases that you could possibly expect to hear from the president. Clean, beautiful coal, economy is so hot, we were a dead country, America is back. As well, one of these points here, President will fist bump the crowd, it would score you a point. Down the bottom left here, you've got after Olympic hockey loss, Canada becomes 51st state. So to Rosemary's point, the White House is putting this out. I think it's an indication of what might be in that speech. The other thing that the White House has put out is a short guest list so far. They're keeping a lot of the Easter eggs for the speech, so we don't know who all the guests will be. But among the list, Erica Kirk, the widow of right-wing activist Charlie Kirk, expected to be there. And then there's the U.S. men's and women's Olympic hockey teams. We know that they were invited. We know that for the men, that a small group has already arrived to the White House from that team. That Donald Trump as well had invited them when they were in the locker room, just post that game. And there is on social media a clip of that moment. I want to play you a little bit of that.
For you guys, and we have to, I must tell you, we're going to have to bring the women's team. You do know that. I do believe I probably would be impeached, okay?
Yeah, so you heard him there. He talked about being possibly impeached if he didn't invite the women. So women were invited, and famously they have said that they can't make it because they're going to be busy with other things. The Democrats also bring in guests as well to make their own political statements. Among them, we're expecting to see Epstein accusers in the crowd, as well as those who have been victims of recent immigration enforcement, and as well the House Speaker Mike Johnson. He has invited maybe the only Canadian, and I heard Paul talking about this, but this is astronaut Jeremy Hansen, because of course they were supposed to be in quarantine right now. That's not happening, and so the NASA astronauts are expected to be there.
Yeah, by the way, this is the door of the White House. We're expecting President Trump to be going through this doorway very soon, heading to the Capitol. I'm still thinking, like, there's some serious issues here tonight, obviously, about the economy, potentially about tariffs, the Epstein survivors, but so irritating to see on that bingo card the reference to the gold medal game. It's going to bother a lot of Canadians.
And I think that's the point.
Yeah, I think that is the point. I just want to pause for a second as well. I guess our audience will see as we see if the president walks through that door while we're on here. But let me just ask you about this practice of bringing guests. A lot of people will assume this has always been the case during the State of the Union, but it hasn't.
As far as I can tell, no, it hasn't. But it became a thing in 1982. Reagan was the president, pardon me, and he used the State of the Union to highlight an American hero. He wanted to talk about hero, and so Lenny Skutnik, who was a government worker at the time, he was a young man, had jumped in a river to save a woman who was potentially going to drown. And was then invited to the State of the Union and sat next to the First Lady and was highlighted in the speech as an example of heroism. And since then, it has become a practice for presidents to invite sometimes average...
and we're just our producer mentioning that there is the president now as he's leaving the White House and making the short drive, though very well protected, to the Capitol, and he will be giving his speech is expected to start in about 50 minutes, right? A little bit after 9 o'clock Eastern. And the other thing, Sarah, we've been warning our audience because the White House has made it clear this will be a long speech. Some people are saying it could be as long as 3 hours. So I don't know if the people who are watching now have the stamina to go through and watch all of that. But I would say that not only can you do that here on CBC News Network and other platforms, but also we will have analysis for you right after the speech. So, you know, if you're finishing dinner or whatever you happen to be doing at that point, and you want to flip on towards the end of the speech, our panel, our correspondents will be able to give you more on this.
And throughout the speech on our live page, we will be updating, fact-checking, pointing out highlights within so you can follow along and read. If you're not playing the bingo card, you can read along on CBC's live page. I'll just finish what I was saying before that, but in terms of the guests, if you follow these State of the Union addresses closely, you'll know that sometimes when these guests arrive, they're referred to as Skutniks, and that's the reason why. It's the last name, Lenny Skutnik, the first of the invited guests under Ronald Reagan.
I had no idea until this moment, and I love it when I learn something chatting with you, Sarah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Katie Simpson is a key part of our coverage, and she'll be joining us from inside the Capitol building over the course of the evening. And Katie, let me ask you the question I've asked Paul and I've asked our panel. What are some of the expectations for tonight?
Well, things are really close to getting underway. A huge procession just made its way past basically the media gauntlet where all of the reporters and the camera crews are all set up. It was led by Vice President J.D. Vance, and then we saw senior members of the Senate, followed by members of the Senate as well. We're starting to see, I believe, some members of Congress now sort of, they're sort of just stuck making their way into the room where they're going to be taking their seats and getting ready for the main event tonight. Donald Trump is going to have one of the largest audiences likely he's going to have all year to make his case to American voters in an election year to continue to vote for Republicans so that it's easier for him to pass his agenda after that midterm mark. Right now, the Republicans have control of the Senate and the House, and Donald Trump wants to keep that in order to be able to continue to pursue his agenda. It's largely expected to be a message about the economy. There is a cost of living crisis in the United States right now, though there have been some changes over the course of Trump's return to office. Gas prices are lower. Stock markets have reached record highs, but a lot of grocery prices, housing prices, rent prices, they are still very challenging for many Americans. And even if some of the bigger numbers might be looking really good, it doesn't necessarily resonate with people. So expect Donald Trump to speak about that kind of thing. And then foreign policy. Is he going to talk about next steps in Iran, where the negotiations continue over Iran's nuclear program? Is the U.S. considering additional strikes on Iranian nuclear targets? Those kinds of things. We spoke with Republican Congressman Mike Lawler just a short time ago to get a little insight into what he's expecting and some of the people he'll be looking for in the crowd tonight.
Obviously, border security, criminal alien deportations, but I also think he needs to address the larger issue of immigration and how we tackle that as a country. So I think there's a lot that the president's going to touch on tonight. I also think I'm hopeful he will really present a hopeful, optimistic message to the American people. I think having the USA men's hockey team here tonight is something that should hopefully unify everybody and bring folks together.
We've spoken to quite a few Republican lawmakers tonight about their expectations, and so many have said they're hoping to hear a message of optimism about life in America right now. But we have to remember, we have seen Donald Trump make these kinds of speeches before, and we know that he often goes on the offensive. He'll attack his predecessors. That is something that many people are expecting. He might attack the Supreme Court justices who are going to be in the room angry about that tariff decision against his tariff agenda, and he could go after his political opponents. That's not something that necessarily would be surprising at this point in Trump's political experience.
We are looking live right now as the vice president, and some feel maybe the nominee in the next presidential election, J.D. Vance, heading in there. So a lot of the people that we would expect in the chamber tonight, but perhaps some empty seats, Katie.
Yeah, so some Democrats are boycotting tonight's speech. They are frustrated with Trump's agenda, and they are, instead of protesting in the chamber, they're participating in events outside of Capitol Hill. So that's one aspect to things. We're also going to see some guests that sort of signal priorities, not just for Republicans. Donald Trump inviting Erica Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk. There are some other guests who have been invited as well, but also Democrats bringing guests to this speech too, and that includes some of the survivors of the Epstein sex trafficking ring. Some will be in the room tonight. As we have heard from both Republicans and Democrats, they are frustrated with the way the Trump administration has handled the release of documents related to the Epstein file. So those are some of the things we should be looking for as this speech gets underway. But earlier tonight, we spoke with Senator Tim Kaine. He's a Democrat. He's from Virginia. He's actually very familiar with the Canada-U.S. file and is very strongly against tariffs. During a conversation earlier tonight, an interview earlier tonight, we asked him, for Canadians looking in at this moment in America, when things are changing so quickly, when the norms and guardrails are sort of being pushed up against, I asked him to describe what it's like to be an American, particularly a lawmaker that's up close to it in this moment.
It's been very tough, but here's the way I look at it. This is the 250th year celebration of American democracy, and we are testing every check and balance that the framers put in place, knowing that there would be the dangers of an executive trying to overreach. We're testing them all: courts, Congress, states, elections, activism, the press. We're testing all of them. And look, we're suffering some damage, but I believe we're going to come out maybe a little bit sadder but wiser, maybe a little bit bruised, but having revitalized our connection to the democracy and brought in a whole new generation of leaders who are going to help us define what democracy looks like going forward.
So, Ian, for much of the night so far, myself and my colleague Sylvia, our wonderful producer here, we sort of have been standing up against some stanchions where you can sort of be close to all the people who are coming and going. We saw key members of the Trump administration, Pam Bondi, who is the Attorney General. We saw Marco Rubio, who is the Secretary of State, Pete Hegseth, who is the Secretary of Defense, Howard Lutnick, who's the Secretary of Commerce. I asked them all questions related to their fields, whether there was anything new to talk about the U.S. plans in Iran, whether there are any more plans to release more Epstein files, whether Pam Bondi had anything to say about the Epstein files. Howard Lutnick, when are talks getting back on with Canada? And every single person walked by and didn't stop this time, but maybe, Ian, maybe they will stop on the way out.
They clearly don't know who you are. We'll have to make sure that they understand that as they walk out. But Tim Kaine stopped, and I wonder, like, you presumably, I don't know if you know him, but I mean, presumably you identified yourself, hey, I'm here with Canadian television, and I assume, and especially from the content of what he said, he wanted to get a message out to Canadians. Was that the sense you had?
Yeah, so Tim Kaine has been on a number of our programs at CBC because he's been such a loud voice when it comes to the tariff agenda, because so many of the businesses that he deals with and works with in Virginia, or represents, the taxpayer he represents, a lot of their industries have been hit particularly hard by the Canada-U.S. tariffs, particularly before they were struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. He was very concerned, particularly with producers of aluminum, with producers of cans and those kinds of things, holding a number of news conferences at Capitol Hill on the lawn, bringing some of these business owners that are in a really difficult position to talk with the media, largely the Canadian media. And so he has been viewed by Canadian officials in Washington as an ally, as a strong voice when it comes to tariffs. Him and Amy Klobuchar, who's a Democratic senator from Minnesota, she's also been a very strong anti-tariff voice who's deeply familiar with the Canada-U.S. relationship. So there are some of those allies on Capitol Hill right now. It's not to Canada's advantage necessarily that they're Democrats, because Democrats do not hold the majority of power right now. They're acting as sort of a check on President Donald Trump's power, and there have been some votes that have been successful against tariffs. But overall, until that Supreme Court ruling last week, there hadn't necessarily been a lot of successful ways to sort of counter those tariffs until really the court stepped in.
Katie, I want to stick with you for a few more minutes as we look live at the Capitol, as people get ready to be seated and greeting each other. And we're about a half an hour away, maybe a little less than half an hour away from Donald Trump beginning his State of the Union address. We're live here on CBC News Network and many other CBC platforms. We will bring you his speech in its entirety. We'll have analysis of that speech after. Katie, I just think it's really interesting to be standing where you're standing as all of those people went by you. And I wonder, for those of us who will never have that opportunity, what more can you tell us about what it's like to be there on a night like this?
Well, when it comes to American politics, I think I've said this a couple of times, like it really doesn't get bigger than this. And even though, this moment in America in politics, it's incredibly volatile, it's deeply divisive. And we're going to see that likely tonight with some of the Democrats not showing up, with some of the Republicans extremely excited with zero criticism, some of them, not all of them, some of them, of President Donald Trump and his agenda. But we're in this room with its marble floors and its huge statues. And you really are reminded that this is a moment in history. And as a Canadian, you don't ever think you're going to sort of be in these spaces. Ian, one thing that's super interesting that, is just by chance is that where we're actually set up right here, Ian, we can't really move. It's all full of media organizations. We all got our own little sliver here. And there's a plaque on the ground to mark where Abraham Lincoln's desk used to be when he was a member of the House. This used to be the House. And when he was here for 2 years as a member of the House, his desk was like right where I'm pointing. His desk was right there. We can't move. I can't show you. So, but it's just trust me, it's over here. But it's those kinds of things that remind you that this is a moment. This is a very volatile moment in American history, particularly with the changes that we've seen with President Donald Trump, the way that he is testing the guardrails of democracy, of the courts, of executive power, those kinds of things. And tonight in this speech, we could very well hear his sort of positions on that again, and his agenda and what he wants to do to reshape America in his vision. Given that he was given a mandate by American voters, more than 77 million people did vote for him. So again, Donald Trump is going to try to make his best case to Americans. It is a very volatile year. That's a word I keep using over and over and over again because it just is. And it really is. We're going to get a preview as to what we are going to probably hear from Republicans for the rest of this election campaign year when those midterms take place in November.
And Donald Trump's motorcade has arrived at the Capitol, so we will be seeing him soon as he walks in, as he gets ready for his speech. Katie, thank you so much, and we will check back with you before that speech begins. Diplomats and politicians around the world are going to be watching the speech tonight, seeing how this could affect foreign relations. And Canada certainly has not been immune to Trump's changes in foreign policy. So what are Canadians watching for? Bob Rae is a former Canadian ambassador to the United Nations, obviously a longtime politician in Ontario and nationally, and he joins us now. As a former ambassador, what are you watching for tonight in the State of the Union?
Well, I no longer see the world only through my former ambassador lens, and it's going to be a performance. This is not actually the State of the Union address. This is the Donald Trump show, and he's a performer. He'll be offensive. He'll be self-defensive. He'll be all over the place. It'll be interesting to see how he can stick to a script or to what extent he just lets it fly. And if he does, it's a high-risk performance for him because a lot of his approaches, a lot of his anger and frustration is not going over well with, certainly with allies. It's not going over well, I think, with a large chunk of the American public opinion. So it's an important night for him to try to get things back on some kind of a track. But I got to say, it's not. I don't look at this as sort of a traditional address where you're giving advice to someone to say, remember this, remember that. He's up there. He's on the trapeze by himself. We'll just see what happens.
Yeah, he may be up there on the trapeze by himself, Bob, but he is the president of the United States, and obviously a lot of power comes with that. You've been a provincial premier in Ontario. You've been a federal cabinet minister. You've been Canada's ambassador to the UN, and I just wonder, what do you think is happening in government offices in Canada as this speech is about to begin? I assume that a lot of bureaucrats and politicians are watching closely and maybe even nervously. But you tell me.
Well, I don't think there's any reason to be nervous. We know what he's like when he lets loose, and I think people will obviously be watching. But at the same time, people are going to be continuing to try to assess how can we work best with others in the United States and in other countries to try to deal with what Katie has referred to as the volatility, which is the polite word. Chaos would be another word that we're seeing from the White House. He's going to try to right the ship, to remind people about the things that he's done that he thinks have been good and that seem to appeal to his base. But at the same time, the attack on the Supreme Court last week was troubling because it showed that the level of anger can sometimes take him into places that don't help either him, the United States, his credibility, or a sense of, well, what is actually going to happen that will make it possible for people to come to rational agreements with the President of the United States. Yes, he is the president, but he's also Donald Trump. And we're going to see to what extent he speaks like a president or to what extent he just speaks like Donald Trump. We're just going to have to see how that goes. Every country in the world is looking at this and then trying to assess, how do we manage through the volatility? To what extent does he try to offset that volatility with some attempts to right the ship? Because right now the ship is not actually in great shape.
We are speaking live with Bob Rae, the former Canadian ambassador to the UN, and those who are watching on CBC News Network now can see that super that we just had up, that Bob is in Scarborough, in Trinidad and Tobago. So I know it's a bit off topic, but I do need to ask you quickly. I assume you're vacationing down there?
Not entirely. Ian, I was giving 2 speeches last week in Trinidad, and to the Caribbean Canadian Institute, as well as to the Canada Trinidad Chamber of Commerce. So it was a good chance for me to engage with the Caribbean, a part of the world that I dealt with a lot in the UN. And yes, I'm sorry, Canadians, I have taken a couple of days off in Tobago, which has been a wonderful experience. I think it's part of the world, Ian, that you may know something about. So it's great to be able to join people from here.
Yeah, I was born in Trinidad, though my family moved to Canada when I was very young, but certainly have very fond or close connections to family and others in Trinidad. So good for you for being there, and you have agreed to stick with us, and we'll be speaking to you a little bit later on in our coverage. Bob Rae, former Canadian ambassador to the United Nations. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ian. Good to talk to you.
Okay, let's go back to Katie Simpson inside the Capitol building. And Katie, what are you seeing now?
Well, everyone's getting ready. It's the excited chit-chat before the president is going to enter the room and sort of walk down the line and shake some hands, as traditionally we have seen. And then it's going to be time for Donald Trump to deliver that speech, and sort of leaning into something that, Ambassador Rae, former Ambassador Rae, had to say there. Is Donald Trump going to deliver a speech where he sounds presidential, or is Donald Trump going to deliver a speech that sounds like Donald Trump? Time after time after time again, we do see Donald Trump lean into who he is as a communicator. And when you talk to Republicans on their way in, they keep talking about how they hope to hear a message of optimism about a brighter future for America and about economic responsibility, because they hope that will resonate with voters in this midterm election year. But there is sort of a sense among some Republicans we spoke with, including Mike Lawler. He's a Republican from New York, and he was asked, do you think Donald Trump is going to go after the Supreme Court justices who ruled against his administration when it came to his tariff agenda? And Mike Lawler laughed. Well, what do you think? Because we have seen time and time again Donald Trump go on the offensive, criticize and attack those who disagree with him. From last week alone, it was Supreme Court justices. Week before that, it was Olympic athletes that sort of had thoughts that were not in line with his political view about, sensitive issues in America, those kinds of things. And so do not be surprised if that is sort of the tone and tack Donald Trump takes in this speech because we have seen it time and time again. There will be a prepared speech, but Donald Trump, again, is known to not follow that speech, to sort of riff and sort of take things in different directions. He calls it the weave, when he sort of starts on one topic, switches to another topic, and then basically comes back to that topic, and sometimes circular, sometimes not. So those are the things that we are used to. Donald Trump is on camera in the United States almost every day, not quite every day, but he speaks for long periods of time. He routinely goes on the attack. And yes, this is a prepared speech, and yes, this is a primetime audience, and it's a bigger audience than he typically gets. But if there's one thing we've seen from Donald Trump is that he's going to do what he wants to do, and he's going to be himself.
Katie Simpson, thank you so much, and we'll continue to check back with you. Remember, Sarah mentioned this bingo card that the White House has put out, which kind of is a whimsical idea. But when you look at the things on here, I guess the idea is you know, which of these things actually happened during the speech. And some are quotes that I guess we can expect from Trump, like clean, beautiful coal mentioned. But for example, one of the squares is after Olympic hockey loss, Canada becomes 51st state, something that the White House may think is a whimsical reference, but I'm pretty sure those of you here in Canada don't find it whimsical at all, and kind of irritating. So brace yourself for that. Let's welcome back our panel. Matthew Bartlett, a Republican strategist, Joel Rubin, a Democratic strategist. Joel, let's start with you this time, and you can overlap with some of the stuff you were talking about before, but as we now are within 15 minutes maybe of the beginning of the speech, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know, Ian, frankly, these speeches, sometimes we overstate their importance or even their value to the speaker. I remember back in early 2024, Joe Biden did a great job at his State of the Union speech. And then months later, we saw the collapse of his candidacy to run again and his presidency overall. So I don't want to overstate the value and the importance of these speeches, but I do think it's a very important signal to the electorate about who they should be thinking about voting for in November. And right now, Republicans are in a panic. There's some numbers out that roughly 90% of all the key elections this past calendar year were won by Democrats. The Democrats flipped 26 state Senate seats and Republicans flipped none. That in many red districts, Democrats are now winning across the country. And so for the president, you know, it can be about him and he can make it about his agenda and his talking points and all. But for those members of Congress sitting there, they are not just sitting there, they are sitting in the hot seat. And I'm sure that they're hoping that he cares a little bit about their future as well.
And as we hear your analysis, Joel, we're looking live at the Capitol and we're watching this U.S. Supreme Court justices walking in. A little bit of a smile now as they are in the front row, as is the custom, but very somber when they walked in. And of course, after their decision overturning Trump's tariffs just a few days ago, and Trump, you know, by Canadian standards anyway, savagely attacking the Supreme Court justices and suggesting that some of them, the Trump nominees who did not agree with his view on tariffs, were, you know, he had some really disrespectful comments about that. One wonders if the Supreme Court justices are bracing themselves for what might be in the State of the Union address today. Matthew Bartlett, Republican strategist, let me go to you next. And let me pick up on something Joel said, and that is, you know, do we, the big we, the media, but others as well, do we overstate the impact of State of the Union addresses?
Well, it certainly seems in recent years, the speech, regardless of president, is forgotten by Wednesday morning. Of course, this could be different. We are getting excerpts now, some expectations. It seems as if the president will again be using this America 250, the 250th anniversary of our country, as a theme throughout his speech, shining a light on our history, on our future, on stories from some of the guests. It seems as if there is also some policy prescriptions on the economy. Joel will be happy to hear housing, prescription drug prices. It seems as if this will be addressed. We will see if it translates into legislation. But Ian, as you said, there's also going to be some theatrics, some optics here. Many of the Dems, over 72 Democrats, will not be president. You could see something of an empty chamber. You could see some Democrats speak out. You could see the president name and address the Supreme Court justices that he's quite upset with, as to put it mildly. So again, the stakes are very high here. This is one of those times where the president will get significant attention, will, as Joel said, kind of give marching orders to the Republican Party throughout the course of the year as we drive deep into the midterms.
Yeah, and as we continue to look live at people who are in the audience and getting ready for, it's interesting to look at the faces, right? And just, I mean, they're just random moments where we catch faces of people, but some very somber, some relaxed, some happy, some taking selfies, and we are very close to the beginning of the speech by the president. And I would say that based on the reaction, I see, the First Lady being introduced and entering, and presumably the president will be coming in here very soon. And as we continue to take these live pictures and get ready for the speech, a reminder to our audience that we are going to bring you on CBC News Network and other CBC platforms the speech live in its entirety, and then we'll have more analysis afterwards. I'm going to ask Joel, you this question first, but then Matthew as well. When you give a speech that's, you know, could be more than 2 hours long, could even be 3 hours long. That's kind of the warning that the president gave. I doubt many people have the stamina. Oh, here we go. I think maybe the president is about to enter. And, okay, Marco Rubio coming in, the Secretary of State, walking in there. When you give a speech that's that long, you know, presumably not a lot of people are going to be watching the entire thing. Joel, do you think these speeches are written, in the old days it would have been with sound bites in mind. Do you think they're written now with social media moments in mind?
Oh, without a doubt. And, you know, the thing about the speech, the cadence of it, for Donald Trump, he seems very awkward when he reads off a teleprompter. And so I think he's going to want to ad-lib, and it's going to be very interesting to gauge, is he really meandering and doing the weave? Is he sticking to the script? But certainly the visuals are going to be key. That was started by Ronald Reagan, President Reagan, who first really figured out how to use the visuals pointing up to the audience and talking about American heroes. And so, yeah, I think President Trump, if there's one expertise he has above all else, it's the expertise of flair. He knows how to capture the American mind. He's been doing it for decades. I would not be at all surprised if he does it again quite a lot tonight. But if it's a few hours long, I have a feeling a lot of people in the chamber might actually be asleep by that point.
Matthew, you're a Republican. You are a Republican strategist. If you had Trump's ear tonight, what would your advice be to him?
Oh gosh, why offer advice that any other Republican would offer and every, you know, and Trump would reject? He is a rare bird. He is going to continue to do the Trump show the better part of a decade now. I remember in the 90s, Bill Clinton gave a 90-minute unprecedented State of the Union. It was laughed at. In fact, so much so that he brought out an alarm clock timer the next day, kind of poking fun of it himself. Now, President Trump, 2.5 hours, maybe 3. It seems as if he's intent on shattering the record. Of course, the record was set by him last year. So yes, this is going to be potential of a circus atmosphere. It could potentially have a Coliseum atmosphere. Tensions are high, stakes are high, but this is, you know, a massive moment yet again in American politics.
Matthew, for the benefit of our Canadian audience, I feel like maybe in the Clinton years, certainly before that, you would have ABC, NBC, CBS as the main places where the speech would be covered, and there'd be a lot of similarity in their coverage just because they had kind of, you know, similar news judgment. Now, I feel like, but Matthew, you tell me, I feel like, you know, Fox and conservative social media and Newsmax will have one version of the speech that they'll be reporting tonight and tomorrow. MS Now, maybe CNN, and some more left of center or centrist social media will have a different view. Is that kind of how it plays out in the States now?
Yes, increasingly our politics have become divided. So too has our media. And yes, as you said, in the 90s, people would huddle by the TV. Now, so many people will be viewing this speech or clips of this speech on their phone through lenses of news outlets that are much more even activist than journalist. And again, this is why sometimes you go to work or you go to the gas station, the coffee shop, and you're just dismayed at what you've heard. Yet the person who lives next to you is over the moon. It's almost, again, not even two different political parties. Sometimes it feels like two different species. So yes, unfortunately, that will continue on. Yet again, the nation will carry on.
As we wait for President Trump to enter the Capitol and as we wait for the beginning of his speech, which might be as little as 10 minutes away, we continue to talk to our political strategists here. And Joel, I'm going to actually ask both of you this, but I'll start, Joel, with you. If indeed, and I think that's the sense I have, is exactly what Matthew said, that you have this divided America, and you have people who will look at this speech in two very different ways, and will look at coverage, which will give them two very different views. I assume, though, that there is a group, maybe they're the independents, maybe they're the undecideds, maybe they're the soft supporters of each of the parties. But Joel, I assume there is a group out there that could switch their allegiance, and those are the people that the president needs to be really concerned about.
Yeah, Ian, I mean, these are the up for grabs people who are oftentimes the undecideds who break at the last minute. And so in many ways, this clearly is going to be focusing on red meat issues for the base, but of course, laying the groundwork for getting to the independents. But I don't think we're going to see these independents changing their minds or making up their minds until much later towards the end of the year, towards the elections themselves. But, to Matt's point, right, like we are in a really diffuse media ecosystem right now. And I don't want to sugarcoat it. People are seeing different things of the same stuff, right? Like it's watching a football game and seeing plays happen and only focusing on one part of it and not the other, and not seeing what happened between the two. And it's creating a disconnect in our politics. What dismays me tonight, I want to go back to this question you had earlier about Democrats not being in the chamber, is that this is a moment of visual unity, potentially, and we're not taking it. And I fear that our politics are getting disconnected. Members instead are going to streaming audiences to speak just to a very narrow niche. And so for the undecideds, the independents, my big fear is that they tune out, that they don't get engaged in politics, that they don't show up at the polls. And then people wonder, well, why did we elect someone like Donald Trump who's 35, 40% popular? It's because people stayed at home. And that's not how a healthy democracy should function.
Yeah, and I do think this point about a divided America, divided media, two different echo chambers is a really important one, because I think particularly for Canadians, it helps us understand how some of the things that a lot of people here feel are so clearly, important political issues may not be as important depending on which of those echo chambers you're in the United States. Matthew and Joel, again, so appreciate having you here this evening. Stand by. We're going to come back to you, but I want to go to our reporter, Katie Simpson, inside the Capitol building. And Katie, we're learning more about what we can expect from the president tonight.
Yeah, the White House just shared some excerpts, and I'm going to be quiet right now because any minute now we are expecting the president to sort of step in. And so I'm going to be quiet from where I am, and I think it's about to happen. Ian, you probably want to listen in.
Yep, let's listen in.
Mr. President.
We are live on CBC News Network and other CBC platforms as we get ready to listen to President Donald Trump's State of the Union address. We will continue to watch these pictures live as he walks in the building. Interesting to see, obviously, the people closest to him here. Happy to get selfies, happy to shake his hand and spend a few moments with him. It's going to take him a while at this rate to get to where he gives the speech. Also curious to see what the reaction will be if we see it from this angle of going by some of his political opponents and the Supreme Court justices, right, who he was very critical of just a few days ago, and they are in the front row. He might be passing them fairly soon. So we will continue to, oh, there we go now. Now he is going past the Supreme Court justices and exchanging pretty formal handshakes. Yeah, interesting to read this reaction. As we watch this, let's go to our correspondent, Katie Simpson, and perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about what we know about tonight's speech.
Yeah, Ian, just before Donald Trump started walking into the room, we got some excerpts from the White House. And essentially, we're going to hear Donald Trump sort of lean into the founding of America at its 250th birthday, which is being marked and celebrated this year. He's going to talk about his America First agenda. That is something that is coming up in these excerpts. And he's talking a lot about the economy. One says, moving forward, factories, jobs, investment, and trillions of dollars will continue pouring into the United States of America because we finally have a president who puts America first. What's a big part of his America First agenda? From his perspective, it's tariffs. And again, you saw him, shaking hands, exchanging very brief pleasantries with the members of the U.S. Supreme Court. Who, of course, the court just handed a stunning blow to President Donald Trump by rejecting his tariff agenda, saying that he overstepped his powers and that he didn't actually have the authority to impose those kinds of tariffs. And so we can expect tariffs to come up this evening. And Donald Trump talking about other key sort of issues that are important to him and his base. Talking about affordability. He's going to be talking about immigration. He has aggressively defended his immigration agenda, targeting people who are illegally in the country. But of course, we've seen more than just that in Minneapolis and what's gone on since there was a surge in immigration enforcement operations in that city and in Minneapolis as a state. And concerns around that. Donald Trump is also going to be talking about keeping communities safe, talking about putting dangerous repeat offenders behind bars. Those kinds of things are going to come up. And then he's going to give a nod to his foreign relations agenda, restoring American security and dominance in the Western Hemisphere.
Members of Congress have the
and I'm going to be quiet because I think this is going to get underway, Ian.
The President of the United States.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. It's really an honor. Speaker Johnson, Vice President Vance, First Lady of the United States. Second Lady of the United States. Members of Congress and my fellow Americans, our nation is back, bigger, better, richer, and stronger than ever before. less than 5 months from now, our country will celebrate an epic milestone in American history, the 250th anniversary of our glorious American independence. This July 4th, we will mark 2.5 centuries of liberty and triumph, progress and freedom in the most incredible and exceptional nation ever to exist on the face of the earth. And you've seen nothing yet. We're going to do better and better and better. This is the golden age of America. When I last spoke in this chamber 12 months ago, I had just inherited a nation in crisis with a stagnant economy, inflation at record levels, a wide-open border, horrendous recruitment for military and police, rampant crime at home, and wars and chaos all over the world. But tonight, after just 1 year, I can say with dignity and pride that we have achieved a transformation like no one has ever seen before, and a turnaround for the ages. It is indeed a turnaround for the ages. And we will never go back to where we were just a very short time ago. We're not going back. Today, our border is secure. Thank you. Today, our border is secure. Our spirit is restored. Inflation is plummeting. Incomes are rising fast. The roaring economy is roaring like never before, and our enemies are scared, our military and police are stacked, and America is respected again, perhaps like never before. After 4 years in which millions and millions of illegal aliens poured across our borders, totally unvetted and unchecked, we now have the strongest and most secure border in American history by far. In the past 9 months, 0 illegal aliens have been admitted to the United States. But we will always allow people to come in legally, people that will love our country and will work hard to maintain our country. The flow of deadly fentanyl across our border is down by a record 56% in 1 year. And last year, the murder rate saw its single largest decline in recorded history. This is the biggest decline, think of it, in recorded history, the lowest number in over 125 years, year 1900. In fact, substantially before my wonderful father, I had a wonderful father, Fred, before he was born, substantially before he was born. That's a long time ago. He wouldn't like me to say that, but that's a long time ago. The Biden administration and its allies in Congress gave us the worst inflation in the history of our country. But in 12 months, my administration has driven core inflation down to the lowest level in more than 5 years, And in the last 3 months of 2025, it was down to 1.7%. Gasoline, which reached a peak of over $6 a gallon in some states under my predecessor, it was quite honestly a disaster, is now below $2.30 a gallon in most states, and in some places $1.99 a gallon. And when I visited the great state of Iowa just a few weeks ago, I even saw $1.85 a gallon for gasoline. Mortgage rates are the lowest in 4 years and falling fast, and the annual cost of a typical new mortgage is down almost $5,000 just since I took office. 1 year. And low interest rates will solve the Biden-created housing problem while at the same time protecting the values of those people who already own a house that really feel rich for the first time in their lives. We want to protect those values. We want to keep those values up. We're going to do both. And we are going to keep it that way. The stock market has set 53 all-time record highs since the election. Think of that, 1 year. Boosting pensions, 401ks, and retirement accounts for the millions and millions of Americans. They're all gaining. Everybody's up, way up. In 4 long years, the last administration got less than $1 trillion in new investment in the United States. And when I say less, substantially less. In 12 months, I secured commitments for more than $18 trillion pouring in from all over the globe. Think of it, much less than $1 trillion for 4 years versus much more than $18 trillion for 1 year. What a difference a president makes. A short time ago, we were a dead country. Now we are the hottest country anywhere in the world, the hottest. As thousands of new businesses are forming and factories, plants, and laboratories are being built, we have added 70,000 new construction jobs in just a very short period of time. It's getting bigger and bigger and stronger. Nobody can believe what they're watching. American oil production is up by more than 600,000 barrels a day, and we just received from our new friend and partner, Venezuela, more than 80 million barrels of oil. American natural gas production is at an all-time high because I kept my promise to drill, baby, drill. More Americans are working today than at any time in the history of our country. Think about that. Any time in the history of our country, more working today, and 100% of all jobs created under my administration have been in the private sector. We ended DEI in America. We cut a record number of job-killing regulations, and in 1 year we have lifted 2.4 million Americans, a record, off of food stamps. And for all of these reasons, I say tonight, members of Congress, the state of our union is strong. Our country is winning again. In fact, we're winning so much that we really don't know what to do about it. People are asking me, please, 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 Mr. President, we're winning too much. We can't take it anymore. We're not used to winning in our country. Until you came along, we're just always losing, but now we're winning too much. And I say, no, 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 you're going to win again. You're going to win big. You're going to win bigger than ever. And to prove that point, here with us tonight is a group of winners who just made the entire nation proud. The men's gold medal Olympic hockey team. Come on in. Go ahead. Take it. That's the first time I've ever seen them get up. And actually, not all of them did get up. But they beat a fantastic Canadian team in overtime, as everybody saw, as did the American women who will soon be coming to the White House. They were in the Oval Office before, and I just want to say a second very big congratulations to Team USA. But I have to say that, and I told them this, and we took a vote of the team. I said, anybody votes no, I'm not doing it. So they stood there, and they weren't about to say no, because I've never seen a goaltender play as well as goalie Connor Hellebuck. Think of it, 46 shots on goal, and I asked him, the one shot, the one where you put your stick in the back and it hit the neck of your stick and bounced off, you practice that, or was that a little lucky? He refused to answer that question. But I just want to tell you that the members of this great hockey squad will be very happy to hear, based on their vote and my vote, and in this case, my vote was more important, that I will soon be presenting Connor with our highest civilian honor, which we will be given and which has been given to many athletes over the years. But when I say many, not too many, like 12, it's called the highest civilian honor in our country, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Great athletes have gotten that, very great, the best, and I thought he deserved it. And I did take a vote, every single one of them. I said, I'm not giving it if anybody goes no, and every single one of them rapidly put up their hand. So I want to thank you all. What a special job you did. What special champions you are. Thank you very much. I'm also pleased to say that the next time the Olympic torch is lit, it will be here in America for the 2028 Olympics, and it's the summer version right in Los Angeles. We're going to do a good job in Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is going to be safe, just like Washington, D.C. is now one of the safest cities in the country. And this year, and I must say I got them both. I got them in my first term, and I was disappointed because I didn't think I'd be the president when this happened. But strange things took place. And now I've got them because I got the Olympics and I got the 2026 FIFA World Cup, and I wanted to claim the 250th, but I didn't get away with that one. I couldn't claim that one for myself. But we're getting the World Cup, so we have the World Cup and the Olympics coming, and that is exciting news. So this will be a year to celebrate our country and the heroes who have kept it free. Men like Buddy Taggart. At age 17, Buddy volunteered to defend America in World War II, serving in the Pacific under the great General Douglas MacArthur. He fought bravely in the famous Battle of Manila, worked so hard. He was badly wounded and almost killed by enemy machine guns in Luzon. And 81 years ago this month, he liberated the largest internment camp in the Philippines, one of the largest anywhere in the world. But he earned many honors, including a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star, came home, started a family, and tonight he is in the gallery looking forward to July 4th, 2026, his 100th birthday. So, Buddy, you're a brave man, and we salute you. Even in times of challenge, setback, and immense heartache, the spirit of 1776 has always shone through very brightly. It was July 4th of last year when floodwaters tore through a girls' summer camp in Central Texas, one of the worst things I've ever seen. I was there, rising 26 feet in the matter of minutes, tragically claiming many, many lives. You all remember that one. as the waters threatened to sweep her away. 11-year-old Millie Kate McClelland closed her eyes and prayed to God. She thought she was going to die. Those prayers were answered when Coast Guard rescue swimmer Scott Ruskin descended from a helicopter above. Nobody knew where he came from. It was Scott's first ever rescue mission. A young guy, but very brave, very, very top, always top in his class. And he lifted not just Millie Kate, but 164 others to safety. People watched Scott from a distance, and they couldn't believe what they were seeing. The winds were blowing, the rain was pouring, everything was going, and that rapid water, nobody's ever seen anything like it. They said, wow, that's something. Tonight, Scott and Millie Kate are here together, reunited for the very first time. Thank you, Scott, Millie Kate. And Petty Officer Ruskin, I'm pleased to inform you that I am now awarding you the Legion of Merit for extraordinary heroism, which is what it was, extraordinary heroism. Thank you. And I'd like to have the military aide to please come down and take care of the service. Military aide, thank you very much. Take care of that very important service. Thank you very much. From 1776 to today, every generation of Americans has stepped forward to defend life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And they're really doing it for the next generation. But now it's our turn. Together we're building a nation where every child has the chance to reach higher and go further, where government answers to the people, not the powerful, and where the interests of hardworking American citizens are always our first and ultimate concern. That is the debt we owe to the heroes who came before us, and that is the promise we must keep to America for our 250th year. Last year, I urged this Congress to begin the mission by passing the largest tax cuts in American history, and our Republican majorities delivered so beautifully. Thank you, Republicans. All Democrats, every single one of them, voted against these really important and very necessary massive tax cuts. They wanted large-scale tax increases to hurt the people instead. But we held strong, and with the great, big, beautiful bill, we gave you no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security for our great seniors. And we also made interest on auto loans tax deductible the first time, but only if the car is made in America. Recently in Pennsylvania, I met Megan Hemhauser, a devoted mom who's homeschools her children, beautiful, 2 children, during the day while waiting tables at night as her husband works overtime operating very heavy equipment. Megan is here this evening and she's happy to tell you that she is so much richer because with no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and our expanded child tax credit done again by Republicans, Megan and her husband will take home more than $5,000 extra just for the year, cutting her tax bill in more than half. Megan, please stand up. We're fighting for you, Megan. Thank you, Megan. We're fighting for you, Megan. Under our bill, parents like Megan can also activate their children's brand new Trump accounts. And I didn't name it. I did not name that. Nobody believes me, but I did not name it. It was named by a very tall man sitting right there in the 3rd row. Nice man, a good man. Tax-free investment accounts for every American child. This is something that's so special and has taken off and gone through the roof. Millions will be pre-funded courtesy of the U.S. Treasury and private individuals like Michael and Susan Dell, who have donated $6.25 billion to fund the Trump accounts for 25 million American children. They're great people. When I asked Michael Dell, how do you make all that money? He said, well, I just sat on my dorm in school and I made computers and I'd sell them to people. And I just kept selling and selling and selling. And pretty amazing story. That's called the American dream. He sold a lot of computers, a lot of those laptops. So I congratulate him on that. But I really thank him and Susan, as well as others like Brad Gerstner, a very tremendous guy. He was behind it right from the beginning. Brad Gerstner. Thank you, Brad. So with modest additional contributions, these young people's accounts could grow to over $100,000 or more by the time they turn 18. Think of it, how much money is that for somebody that started with nothing? Over 100,000, could be much more than that. To make this investment in our children's future, go to trumpaccounts.gov, trumpaccounts.gov. And a lot of people are doing it. It's setting every record in the book. It's popular. They knew what it was going to take. I'm so proud of them. I'm so proud of the people that got it started. And now it's just taken off. One of the primary reasons for our country's stunning economic turnaround, the biggest in history, where the Dow Jones broke 50,000 4 years ahead of schedule, and the S&P hit 7,000, where it wasn't supposed to do it for many years, were tariffs. I used these tariffs, took in hundreds of billions of dollars to make great deals for our country, both economically and on a national security basis. Everything was working well. Countries that were ripping us off for decades are now paying us hundreds of billions of dollars. They were ripping us so badly, you all know that. Everybody knows it. Even the Democrats know it. They just don't want to say it. And yet these countries are now happy, and so are we. We made deals. The deals are all done. And they're happy. They're not making money like they used to, but we're making a lot of money. There was no inflation, tremendous growth, and the big story was how Donald Trump called the economy correctly, and 22 Nobel Prize winners in economics didn't. They got it totally wrong. They got it really wrong. And then just 4 days ago, an unfortunate ruling from the United States Supreme Court. It just came down. It came down. Very unfortunate ruling. But the good news is that almost all countries and corporations want to keep the deal that they already made, right, Scott? Knowing that the legal power that I, as president, have to make a new deal could be far worse for them, and therefore they will continue to work along the same successful path that we had negotiated before the Supreme Court's unfortunate involvement. So despite the disappointing ruling, these powerful, country-saving, it's saving our country, the kind of money we're taking in, peace-protecting. Many of the wars I settled was because of the threat of tariffs. I wouldn't have been able to settle them without. Will remain in place under fully approved and tested alternative legal statutes. And they have been tested for a long time. They're a little more complex, but they're actually probably better, leading to a solution that will be even stronger than before. Congressional action will not be necessary. It's already time-tested and approved. And as time goes by, I believe the tariffs paid for by foreign countries will, like in the past, substantially replace the modern-day system of income tax, taking a great financial burden off the people that I love. Right? Moving forward, factories, jobs, investment, and trillions of dollars will continue pouring into the United States of America because we finally have a president who puts America first. I put America first. I love America. For decades before I came along, we had the exact opposite. From trade to healthcare, from energy to immigration, everything was stolen and rigged in order to drain the wealth out of the productive, hardworking people who make our country great, who make our country run. Under Biden and his corrupt partners in Congress and beyond, it reached a breaking point with the Green New Scam, open borders for everyone. They poured in by the millions and millions from prisons, from mental institutions. They were murderers, 11,888 murders. They came into our country. You allowed that to happen. And record-setting inflation that cost the typical family $34,000 in just a speck of time. Now the same people in this chamber who voted for those disasters suddenly used the word affordability, a word. They just used it. Somebody gave it to them, knowing full well that they caused and created the increased prices that all of our citizens had to endure. You caused that problem. You caused that problem. They knew their statements were a lie. They knew it. They knew their statements were a dirty, rotten lie. Their policies created the high prices. Our policies are rapidly ending them. We are doing really well. Those prices are plummeting downward. The price of eggs is down 60%, Madam Secretary, thank you. The cost of chicken, butter, fruit, hotels, automobiles, rent is lower today than when I took office by a lot. And even beef, which was very high, is starting to come down significantly. Just hold on a little while, we're getting it down. And soon you will see numbers that few people would think were possible to achieve just a short time ago. Nobody can believe when they see the kind of numbers, and especially energy, when they see energy going down to numbers like that, they cannot believe it. It's like another big tax cut. I'm also confronting one of the biggest ripoffs of our times, the crushing cost of health care caused by you. Since the passage of the Unaffordable Care Act, sometimes referred to as Obamacare, big insurance company has gotten rich. It was meant for the insurance companies, not for the people. With our government giving them hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars a year as their stock prices soared 1,000, 1,200, 1,400, and even 1,700%, like nothing else. That's why I introduced the great health care plan. I want to stop all payments to big insurance companies and instead give that money directly to the people so they can buy their own health care, which will be better health care at a much lower cost. In addition, my plan requires maximum price transparency. That's a big deal. Sounds so simple, so big. And I did that in my first term, and the Democrats immediately terminated it with full knowledge that they were doing a very bad thing for the people. Of course, we're going to go way up, and that's what happened, and now I'm bringing them way down on health care and everything else. I'm also ending the wildly inflated cost of prescription drugs like has never happened before. Other presidents tried to do it, but they never could. They tried. Most didn't try, actually. But they tried. They said they tried. They couldn't do it. They didn't even come close. They were all talk and no action, but I got it done. Under my just enacted most favored nation agreements, Americans who have for decades paid by far the highest prices of any nation anywhere in the world for prescription drugs will now pay the lowest price anywhere in the world for drugs. Anywhere. The lowest price. So in my first year of the second term, should be my third term, but strange things happen. I took prescription drugs, a very big part of health care, from the highest price in the entire world to the lowest. That's a big achievement. The result is price differences of 300, 400, 500, 600% and more, all available right now at a new website called TrumpRx.gov. And I didn't name that one either, by the way. And here tonight is the very first customer ever to get that big discount, and it is big, Catherine Rayner. For 5 years, she and her husband have struggled with infertility, and they turned to IVF. One drug has been costing Catherine $4,000 to purchase, but a few weeks ago, she logged onto the TrumpRx website and got that same drug that cost $4,000, got it for under $500. A reduction of much more, actually, than $3,500. Catherine, we are all praying for you, and you're going to be a great mom. So now I'm calling on Congress to codify my most favored nation program into law. Now, the one thing, I'm not sure it matters because it's going to be very hard for somebody that comes along after me to say, let's raise drug prices by 700 or 800%. But John and Mike, if you don't mind, codify it anyway. They may do it. Codify it anyway. Thank you. Many Americans are also concerned that energy demand from AI data centers could unfairly drive up their electric utility bills. Tonight, I'm pleased to announce that I have negotiated the new Ratepayer Protection Pledge. You know what that is? We're telling the major tech companies that they have the obligation to provide for their own power needs. They can build their own power plants as part of their factory so that no one's prices will go up And in many cases, prices of electricity will go down for the community, and very substantially down. This is a unique strategy never used in this country before. We have an old grid. It could never handle the kind of numbers, the amount of electricity that's needed. So I'm telling them they can build their own plant. They're going to produce their own electricity. It will ensure the company's ability to get electricity while at the same time lowering prices of electricity for you, and could be very substantial for all of you cities and towns. You're going to see some good things happen over the next number of years. Another pillar of the American dream that has been under attack is home ownership. With us tonight is Rachel Wiggins, a mom of 2 from Houston. She placed bids on 20 homes and lost all of those bids to gigantic investment firms that bypassed inspection, paid all cash, and turned those houses into rentals, stealing away her American dream. She was devastated. Stories like this are why last month I signed executive order to ban large Wall Street investment firms from buying up into thousands single-family homes. And now I'm asking Congress to make that ban permanent, because homes for people, really, that's what we want. We want homes for people, not for corporations. Corporations are doing just fine. Rachel, thank you very much. Good luck with your home. You'll get one soon. We're also working to make it easier for Americans to save for retirement. And under this administration, we will always protect Social Security and Medicare. They are not protecting it for our seniors. We will always protect Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Since I took office, the typical 401k balance is up by at least $30,000. That's a lot of money. We have millions and millions of people, because the stock market has done so well, setting all those records. Your 401ks are way up. Yet half of all of working Americans still do not have access to a retirement plan with matching contributions from an employer. To remedy this gross disparity, I'm announcing that next year my administration will give these often forgotten American workers, great people, the people that built our country, access to the same type of retirement plan offered to every federal worker. We will match your contribution with up to $1,000 each year. As we ensure that all Americans can profit from a rising stock market, let's also ensure that members of Congress cannot corruptly profit from using insider information. They stood up for that. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Did Nancy Pelosi stand up if she's here? Doubt it. Pass the Stop Insider Trading Act without delay. I wasn't sure if anybody, even on this side, was going to applaud for that. I'm very impressed. Thank you. I'm very impressed. But when it comes to the corruption that is plundering, it's plundering America. There's been no more stunning example than Minnesota, where members of the Somali community have pillaged an estimated $19 billion from the American taxpayer. Oh, we have all the information. And in actuality, the number is much higher than that. And California, Massachusetts, Maine, and many other states are even worse. This is the kind of corruption that shreds the fabric of a nation, and we are working on it like you wouldn't believe. So tonight, although started 4 months ago, I am officially announcing the war on fraud to be led by our great Vice President J.D. Vance. will get it done. And if we're able to find enough of that fraud, we will actually have a balanced budget overnight. It'll go very quickly. That's the kind of money you're talking about. We'll balance our budget. The Somali pirates who ransacked Minnesota remind us that there are large parts of the world where bribery, corruption, and lawlessness are the norm, not the exception. Importing these cultures through unrestricted immigration and open borders brings those problems right here to the USA. And it is the American people who pay the price in higher medical bills, car insurance rates, rent, taxes, and perhaps most importantly, crime. We will take care of this problem. We're going to take care of this problem. We are not playing games. Delilah. Delilah Colvin was only 5 years old in June 2024 when a 18-wheel tractor trailer plowed into her stopped car traveling at 60 miles an hour or more. The driver was an illegal alien let in by Joe Biden and given a commercial driver's license by open borders politicians in California. Doctors said Delilah would never be able to walk or talk, have a good life. She wouldn't even be able to eat again. But against all odds, she is now in the first grade learning to walk, and she's here this evening with her dad, Marcus, a fantastic man. Delilah, please, you are a great inspiration. Please stand up. Thank you, Delilah. Many, if not most, illegal aliens do not speak English and cannot read even the most basic road signs as to direction, speed, danger, or location. That's why tonight I'm calling on Congress to pass what we will call the Delilah Law, barring any state from granting commercial driver's licenses to illegal aliens. And yesterday, as you probably saw at the White House, I hosted a ceremony with Americans who lost their treasured loved ones to the scourge of illegal immigration. People came into our country, how we allowed this to happen with our open borders. These are the angel moms and families that for decades our government betrayed and our media totally ignored. It was terrible. Hard to believe, actually. In 2023, a 16-year-old high school cheerleader named Elizabeth Medina was supposed to perform in her town's Christmas parade, but she never arrived. Her mother, Jacqueline, went home to look for her, and she found her lying dead in a bathtub, bleeding profusely after being stabbed 25 times. Elizabeth's killer was a previously arrested illegal alien who had broken in and brutally extinguished the brightest light in her family's life, violently and viciously. Her heartbroken mother is in the gallery to remind everyone in this chamber exactly why we are deporting illegal alien criminals to our country at record numbers, and we're getting them the hell out of here fast. We don't want them. Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Thank you. We can never forget that many in this room not only allowed the border invasion to happen before I got involved, but indeed they would do it all over again, if they ever had the chance, if they ever got elected, they would open up those borders to some of the worst criminals anywhere in the world. The only thing standing between Americans and a wide open border right now is President Donald J. Trump and our great Republican patriots in Congress. Thank you. Thank you. As we speak, Democrats in this chamber have cut off all funding for the Department of Homeland Security. It's all cut off. It's all cut off. They have instituted another Democrat shutdown, the first one costing us 2 points on GDP. 2 points we lost on GDP, which probably made them quite happy, actually. Now they have closed the agency responsible for protecting Americans from terrorists and murderers. Tonight I'm demanding the full and immediate restoration of all funding for the border security, homeland security of the United States, and also for helping people clean up their snow. We have no money because of the Democrats, and it would be nice, we'd love to give you a hand at cleaning it up, but you gave no money. Nobody's getting paid. It's a shame. So you have to think about it. We have, in case you didn't know, a pretty large snowstorm out there. One of the great things about the State of the Union is how it gives Americans the chance to see clearly what their representatives really believe. So tonight I'm inviting every legislator to join with my administration in reaffirming a fundamental principle. If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. Isn't that a shame? You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself. That is why I'm also asking you to end deadly sanctuary cities that protect the criminals and enact serious penalties for public officials who block the removal of criminal aliens. In many cases, drug lords, murderers all over our country, they're blocking the removal of these people out of our country, and you should be ashamed of yourself. And perhaps most importantly, I'm asking you to approve the Save America Act. to stop illegal aliens and others who are unpermitted persons from voting in our sacred American elections. That cheating is rampant in our elections. It's rampant. It's very simple. All voters must show voter ID. All voters must show proof of citizenship in order to vote. And no more crooked mail-in ballots except for illness, disability, military, or travel. None. And this should be an easy one. And by the way, it's polling at 89%, including Democrats. 89%. And even the new communist mayor of New York City, I think he's a nice guy, actually. Speak to him a lot. Bad policy, but nice guy. Just said they want people to shovel snow. They got hit hard. Wants them to shovel snow, but if you apply for that job, you need to show 2 original forms of ID and a Social Security card. Yet they don't want identification for the greatest privilege of them all, voting in America. No, it's no good. No good. Both Republicans and Democrats overwhelmingly agree on the policy that we just enunciated. And Congress should unite and enact this common sense, country-saving legislation right now, and it should be before anything else happens. And the reason they don't want to do it, why would anybody not want voter ID? One reason, because they want to cheat. There's only one reason. They make up all excuses. They say it's racist. They come up with things you almost say, what imagination they have. They want to cheat. They have cheated, and their policy is so bad that the only way they can get elected is to cheat. And we're going to stop it. We have to stop it, John. And here is one more opportunity to show common sense in government. In the gallery tonight are Sage Blair and her mother, Michelle. In 2021, Sage was 14 when school officials in Virginia sought to socially transition her to a new gender, treating her as a boy and hiding it from her parents. Hard to believe, isn't it? Before long, a confused Sage ran away from home after she was found in a horrific situation in Maryland. A left-wing judge refused to return Sage to her parents because they did not immediately state that their daughter was their son. Sage was thrown into an all-boys state home and suffered terribly for a long time. But today, all of that is behind them because Sage is a proud and wonderful young woman with a full-ride scholarship to Liberty University. Sage and Michelle, please stand up. And thank you for your great bravery. And who can believe that we're even speaking about things like this? 15 years ago, if somebody was up here and said that, they'd say, what's wrong with him? But now we have to say it because it's going on all over numerous states without even telling the parents. But surely we can all agree no state can be allowed to rip children from their parents' arms and transition them to a new gender against the parents' will. Who would believe that we're even talking about this? We must ban it, and we must ban it immediately. Look, nobody stands up. These people are crazy, I'm telling you. They're crazy. Amazing. Incredible. Boy, oh boy. We're lucky we have a country. With people like this, Democrats are destroying our country, but we've stopped it just in the nick of time, didn't we? No one cares more about protecting America's youth than our wonderful First Lady, now a movie star. She's a movie star. Can you believe it? Who would have believed that? Over the past year, she has had an incredible impact championing AI legislation, advancing a landmark executive order on foster care, and helping secure $30 million to launch the Melania Trump Foster Youth to Independence Initiative. It's a tremendous, really a tremendous thing that happened and had a lot of bipartisan support. She gets much better bipartisan support than I do. I get none. She gets a lot. Someday you're going to have to tell me how you did that. And students and educators in every state have joined the First Lady's efforts in the presidential AI challenge, keeping America's next generation positioned to succeed and strongly succeed in the future. Tonight we welcome two young people whose lives reflect the First Lady's impact, Sierra Burns and Everest Nevermont. Thank you both, and Melania, thank you. I know how hard you worked on it. Thank you very much. I'm very proud to say that during my time in office, both the first 4 years and in particular this last year, there has been a tremendous renewal in religion, faith, Christianity, and belief in God. Tremendous renewal. This is especially true among young people, and a big part of that had to do with my great friend, Charlie Kirk, a great guy, great man. So last year, Charlie was violently murdered by an assassin and martyred, really martyred for his beliefs. His wonderful wife, Erica, is with us tonight. Erica, please stand. Thank you, Erica. Been through a lot. In Charlie's memory, we must all come together to reaffirm that America is one nation under God, and we must totally reject political violence of any kind. We love religion, and we love bringing it back. And it's coming back at levels that nobody actually thought possible. It's really a beautiful thing to see. Above all, unleashing America's promise requires keeping our communities safe. We have made incredible strides, yet dangerous repeat offenders continue to be released by pro-crime Democrat politicians again and again. We are honored to be joined tonight by a woman who's been through hell, Anya Zarutska. In 2022, she and her beautiful daughter, so beautiful, what a beautiful young woman, Irina, fled war-torn Ukraine to live with relatives near Charlotte, North Carolina. And by the way, what's going on with Charlotte? Last summer, 23-year-old Irina was riding home on the train when a deranged monster who had been arrested over a dozen times and was released through no cash bail stood up and viciously slashed a knife through her neck and body. No one will ever forget. There were people on that train. No one will ever forget the expression of terror on Irina's face as she looked up at her attacker in the last seconds of her life. She died instantly. She had escaped a brutal war only to be slain by a hardened criminal, set free to kill in America, came in through open borders. Mrs. Zarutska, tonight I promise you we will ensure justice for your magnificent daughter, Irina. How do you not stand? How do you not stand? I'm asking this Congress to pass tough legislation to ensure that violent and dangerous repeat offenders are put behind bars, and importantly, that they stay there. Starting last summer, I deployed our National Guard and federal law enforcement to restore law and order to our most dangerous cities, including Memphis, Tennessee, big success, New Orleans, Louisiana, big success, and our nation's capital itself, Washington, D.C., where we have almost no crime anymore in Washington, D.C. How did that happen? In fact, crime in Washington is now at the lowest level ever recorded, and murders in D.C. this January were down close to 100% from a year ago. They don't like to hear that. One of the sick people, one of the brave service members who helped achieve this stunning turnaround was 20-year-old West Virginia Army National Guard Specialist Sarah Beckstrom. After a 4-month deployment, she voluntarily extended her service, and her rank was going to be lifted. She was doing so well. They were so proud of her. But the very next day, she was on patrol near the White House when she was ambushed and shot in the head by a terrorist monster from Afghanistan. Shouldn't have been in our country. And all because she wore the uniform of our nation, she was shot. He traveled here because he didn't like people wearing our uniform. He was sick and deranged, shouldn't have been in our country. Sarah Beckstrom died in order to defend our capital, and we are honored to be joined by her wonderful parents, Gary and Eva Lee. Your daughter was a true American patriot, and she will be greatly missed. She was a great person. I saw reports on her. They've never seen anything like her. So sorry. Thank you very much. A great young lady. I saw reports that were like, perfect. She was perfect. Serving alongside Sarah that day was Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf. The terrorist shot Andrew in the head, and no one thought he could possibly make it. The two of them, Sarah and Andrew, both shot violently in the head. Neither was expected to make it. They weren't even given a chance, except his wonderful mother, named Melody, who I spoke to the same night, and she was so positive. The doctors thought that Andrew was gone, but his mother said, no, no, Mr. President, Andrew will be fine. He's going to make it. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, he was given almost no chance. She said, I have no doubt, sir, he's going to be okay. This was a conversation that I had with her that night, with her son laying helplessly in bed, blood all over. Everybody is praying, she said, sir, he will be okay. The doctors didn't understand what she was saying, and after looking at the results of the damage done, neither did I. She was so strong and conclusive that even Andrew's great father felt she didn't really understand the gravity of the situation. But she turned out to be right. Right, Melody? She turned out to be right. Amazing, actually. I said, where does this woman come from? She's the most positive person I've ever met. With God's help, Andrew has battled back from the edge of death, and we're talking about the edge of death, on his way to a miraculous recovery. He's got a little work to do, but he's doing great. Nice to see you. He's a good-looking guy. Nice to see you. Thanks, Andrew. Thank you very much. So, Andrew, while you're up, now I'm going to ask a highly respected General James Seward to present Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf and the great family of Sarah Beckstrom with the award created by our late, great President George Washington himself. It's called the Purple Heart. We love you all. Love you. We're proudly restoring safety for Americans at home, and we are also restoring security for Americans abroad. Our country has never been stronger. In my first 10 months, I ended 8 wars, including Cambodia. Isn't it funny? Sick people. Cambodia and Thailand, Pakistan and India. Would have been a nuclear war. 35 million people said the Prime Minister of Pakistan would have died if it were not for my involvement. Kosovo and Serbia, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, Armenia and Azerbaijan, the Congo and Rwanda, and of course the war in Gaza, which proceeds at a very low level. It's just about there. And I want to thank Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner for your help. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jared. And I also want to thank the man they report to, Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Thank you, Marco. People like you. You know, Marco got 100% of the votes when he was in confirmation. I think our next one was about 54%. And some of the Democrats are now saying, I can't believe we approved that guy. And he said it's an honor that they feel that way, right, Marco? You have done a great job, great Secretary of State. I think he'll go down as the best ever. Under the ceasefire I negotiated, every single hostage, both living and dead, has been returned home. Can you believe that? Nobody thought it was possible. Nobody thought that was possible. Both living and dead, and those parents who had a dead son, their boy, they'd always tell me their boy, they wanted him as much as though he were living. That was an amazing period of time. And they came back, and when we got all of the living hostages back, and many, many before them, but I always said those last 20 are going to be very tough, but we got many, many more, hundreds. But I said those last 20 are going to be tough. We got them back. But we only got back 14 or 15 of the dead, of the 28. And believe it or not, Hamas worked along with Israel, and they dug, and they dug, and they dug. It's a tough thing to do, going through bodies all over, passing up 100 bodies sometimes for each one that they found. Tough job. And they finally got it back to 27. And then Steve and Jared, they got it back to 28. They found all 28. Nobody thought that was possible, but we did it. And I remember the family of the 28th. They were so grieved, but they were so happy as it's possible to be. They had their boy back. The mother said, "Sir, we have our boy back." What a period of time that was, but we got them all back. So thank you both very much. Great job. And we're working very hard to end the 9th war, the killing and slaughter between Russia and Ukraine, where 25,000 soldiers are dying each and every month. Think of that, 25,000 soldiers are dying a month. A war which would have never happened if I were president, would have never happened. As president, I will make peace wherever I can, but I will never hesitate to confront threats to America wherever we must. That's why in a breakthrough operation last June, the United States military obliterated Iran's nuclear weapons program with an attack on Iranian soil known as Operation Midnight Hammer. For decades, it had been the policy of the United States never to allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. Many decades. Since they seized control of that proud nation 47 years ago, the regime and its murderous proxies have spread nothing but terrorism and death and hate. They've killed and maimed thousands of American service members and hundreds of thousands and even millions of people with what's called roadside bombs. They were the kings of the roadside bomb. And we took out Soleimani. I did that during my first term. Had a huge impact. He was the father of the roadside bomb. And just over the last couple of months with the protests, they've killed at least, it looks like, 32,000 protests. 32,000 protesters in their own country. They shot them and hung them. We stopped them from hanging a lot of them with the threat of serious violence. But this is some terrible people. They've already developed missiles that can threaten Europe and our bases overseas, and they're working to build missiles that will soon reach the United States of America. After Midnight Hammer, they were warned to make no future attempts to rebuild their weapons program, and in particular, nuclear weapons. Yet they continue, starting it all over. We wiped it out, and they want to start all over again, and are at this moment again pursuing their sinister ambitions. We are in negotiations with them. They want to make a deal, but we haven't heard those secret words. We will never have a nuclear weapon. My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy. But one thing is certain, I will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror, which they are by far, to have a nuclear weapon. Can't let that happen. And no nation should ever doubt America's resolve. We have the most powerful military on earth. I rebuilt the military in my first term. We're going to continue to do so. Also, we just approved a $1 trillion budget. We have no choice. We have to be strong, because hopefully we will seldom have to use this great power that we built together. It's really called peace through strength, and it's been very, very effective. So thanks to Republicans in Congress, we're investing that record number of dollars, have no choice, in the United States Armed Forces. Also creating a lot of jobs, but we're not even doing it for that reason. Because as I said, we have more jobs, more people working today than ever before in the history of our country. And NATO countries are friends and allies. They are. They're our friends and they're our allies. Have just agreed, at my very strong request, to pay 5% of GDP for military defense rather than the 2%, which they weren't paying. We were paying for almost all of NATO. Now they're paying 5 as opposed to not paying 4. And getting that 5% was something which everyone said would never be done, could not happen. We got it really easily with one meeting. And big difference between 2% that's not paid. We were paying the freight of many of them. Very few were paid up. Now 5%, then they're paid. And everything we send over to Ukraine is sent through NATO, and they pay us in full. They pay us totally in full. Every branch of our armed forces is setting records for recruitment. This is so exciting. And every service member recently. And every service member recently received a warrior dividend of $1,776. You know, they put it on my desk. We got the money from tariffs and other things, a lot of money we have. We have much more money than people understand. Have to rebuild that program a little bit, but it won't take long. But we got the money, and it was $1,775, and they wanted my approval. And I said, what's the number? $1,775. I said, wait a minute, for $1 more we can have $1,776. It's going to I said, we're going to figure that. I never asked anybody if we could afford it. $1 more. I said 1776. And I said, that's good. And I'll tell you what, our military, that was 4 months ago, our military, I never see a person in the military that doesn't thank me for it, so we're honored to do it. They deserve it. And we call it 1776. It was great. And we love our military. We love our law enforcement. We love our firemen. You know, the firemen don't get mentioned enough. We love our firemen. We're also... We're also restoring American security and dominance in the Western Hemisphere, acting to secure our national interests and defend our country from violence, drugs, terrorism, and foreign interference. For years, large swaths of territory in our region, including large parts of Mexico, really large parts of Mexico, have been controlled by murderous drug cartels. That's why I designated these cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, and I declared illicit fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. And with our new military campaign, we have stopped record amounts of drugs coming into our country and virtually stopped it completely coming in by water or sea. You probably noticed that. We very seriously damaged their fishing industry also. Nobody wants to go fishing anymore. We've also taken down one of the most sinister cartel kingpins of all. You saw that yesterday. In January, elite American warriors carried out one of the most complex, spectacular feats of military competence and power in world history. No one's seen anything like it. Foreign leaders, I won't tell you who, called me and they said, very impressive, very good. They couldn't believe, they all watched, they saw what happened. This is a different fighting force that we had years ago when we fought to tie. You know, it's a great fighting force. I'm so proud of it. Look at Space Force. Space Force is my baby, because we did that. My baby is becoming so important. And America's armed forces overwhelmed all defenses and utterly defeated an enemy, good fighters, to end the reign of outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro and bring him to face American justice. And this was an absolutely colossal victory for the security of the United States, and it also opens up a bright new beginning for the people of Venezuela. We're working closely with the new president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, to unleash extraordinary economic gains for both of our countries and to bring new hope to those who have suffered so terribly. They really did suffer. With us tonight is Alejandro Gonzalez. She grew up in a tight-knit Venezuelan family and was especially close to her beloved uncle Enrique. But after Enrique ran for office and opposed Maduro, he was kidnapped by Maduro's security forces and thrown into the regime's really infamous prison in Caracas. Alejandro feared she would never see her uncle again. She feared for her own life also. But since the raid, we have worked with the new leadership, and they have ordered the closure of that vile prison and released hundreds of political prisoners already, with more to come. Alejandro, I'm pleased to inform you that not only has your uncle been released, but he is here tonight. We brought him over to celebrate his freedom with you in person. Enrique, please come down. Thank you, Enrique. Have a good time. Nice to have you back, Enrique. There were many heroes on that January raid to capture Maduro, really great heroes. It was very dangerous. They knew we were coming. They were all set. But the deeds of one warrior that night will live forever in the eternal chronicles of military valor. Chief Warrant Officer 5, Eric Slover, planned the mission and was the flight lead in the cockpit of the first helicopter. A big, beautiful, powerful helicopter. It was a massive Chinook carrying, as you can imagine, many, many American warfighters. Wearing the dog tags, his wife Amy had blessed with holy water before he left. She knew it was going to be a rough one. Eric steered the Chinook under the cover of night and descended swiftly upon Maduro's heavily protected military fortress. This was a major military installation, protected by thousands of soldiers and guarded by Russian and Chinese military technology. How did that work out? Not too good. While preparing to land, enemy machine guns fired from every angle, and Eric was hit very badly in the leg and hip, one bullet after another. He absorbed 4 agonizing shots, shredding his leg into numerous pieces. And yet, despite the fact that the use of his legs was vital to successful helicopter flight, legs are the most important part of flying a helicopter, to deliver the many commandos who would capture and detain Maduro was the only thing Eric was thinking about. Then, even as he was gushing blood, which was flowing back down the aisle, helicopter lands at a steep angle. The machine gun stood right in front of him. They were right in front of him, 2 machine gunners who escaped the wrath of the previous planes. Eric maneuvered his helicopter with all of those lives and souls to face the enemy and let his gunners eliminate the threat. Turned the helicopter around so the gunners could take care of business, saving the lives of his fellow warriors from what could have been a catastrophic crash deep in enemy territory. Only after safely landing the helicopter with all the warriors aboard in the exact right spot, which was vital to the mission. We probably would have had to maybe cancel the mission if that didn't happen. Eric told his co-pilot, also wounded, but not as gravely, to take over. I'm about ready to pass out. The success of the entire mission and the lives of his fellow warriors hinge on Eric's ability to take searing pain. It was unbelievable what's happened to his legs of the bullets and keep on flying and landing, and people knew what was happening. Everybody in the back of the helicopter knew because they saw the blood pouring down the aisle. Chief Warrant Officer Slover is still recovering from his serious wounds, but I'm thrilled to say that he is here tonight with his wife Amy, Eric, and Amy, come on in. So we have a surprise for Eric and Amy. In recognition of Eric's actions above and beyond the call of duty, I would now like to ask General Jonathan Braga to present Chief Warrant Officer Slover with our nation's highest military award, the Congressional Medal of Honor. Well, thank you very much, Eric and Amy. Great to get to know you. I met with them and with a lot of their fellow warriors at Fort Bragg recently. You notice the name Fort Bragg, we have it back, we brought it back. We won the First World War with it, the Second World War with it, and then they decided to change the name. So we changed it back. Everybody wanted to change back too. And 10 of Eric's fellow warriors from that incredible night of victory will also be receiving medals at a private ceremony that will soon be held at the White House. And Eric will be there. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. That's a big one. Tonight we've celebrated many truly extraordinary American patriots, but there is one last living legend to honor before we go. He is one more heroic American aviator, Navy fighter pilot. Royce Williams served in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, flying more than 220 missions. In the skies over Korea in 1952, Royce was in the dogfight of a lifetime, legendary dogfight. Flying through blizzard conditions, his squadron was ambushed by 7 Soviet fighter planes. It was his first aerial combat of the war, and despite being massively outnumbered and outgunned, Royce led the takedown of 4 enemy jets and almost destroyed the others, vanquishing his adversaries while taking 263 bullets to his own plane and being seriously hurt. His story was secret for over 50 years. He didn't even want to tell his wife, but the legend grew and grew. But tonight, at 100 years old, this brave Navy captain is finally getting the recognition he deserves. He was a legend long before this evening. Royce, please stand up, and I will ask the First Lady of the United States to present Captain Royce Williams with his Congressional Medal of Honor. Thank you, Royce, and thank you, Eric. I've always wanted the Congressional Medal of Honor, but I was informed I'm not allowed to give it to myself, and I wouldn't know why I'd be taking it, but if they ever open up that law, I will be there with you someday. But you know, that's our highest honor, Congressional Medal of Honor, and that's a big thing, and it's an honor to be in the same room with you. Thank you both very much, Eric. Thank you. Thank you. 250 years is a long time in the life of a nation, but in another sense, it's really a mere moment in the eye of history. Two of the gentlemen we met in the gallery this evening took their first breaths 1 century ago, 100 years before that, on July 4th, 1826, the author of the Declaration of Independence, brilliant, Thomas Jefferson, drew his last breath. Just a single long human lifespan separates the giants who declared and won our independence from the heroes who stand among us tonight. Everything our nation has done, everything we have achieved, has been the work of those few great lifetimes. In those brief chapters, Americans built this nation from 13 humble colonies into the pinnacle of human civilization and human freedom, the strongest, wealthiest, most powerful, most successful nation in all of history. Americans ventured out across the daunting and dangerous continent. We carved paths through an unforgiving wilderness, settled a boundless frontier, and tamed the beautiful but very, very dangerous Wild West. From empty marshes and wide open plains, we raised up the world's greatest cities. Together we mastered the world's mightiest industries and shattered history's monstrous tyrannies. And we liberated millions from the chains of fascism, communism, oppression, and terror. Americans lifted humanity into the skies on the wings of aluminum and steel. And then we launched mankind into the stars on rockets powered by sheer American will and unyielding American pride. We wired the globe with our ingenuity. We captivated the planet with American culture. And now we are pioneering the next great American breakthroughs that will change the entire world. All of this and so much more is the enduring legacy, unmatched glory of the hardworking patriots who built and defended this country and who still carry the hopes and freedoms on all of humanity's backs. For years they were forgotten, betrayed, and cast aside, but that great betrayal is over and they will never be forgotten again, because when the world needs courage, daring, vision, and inspiration, it is still turning to America. And when God needs a nation to work his miracles, he knows exactly who to ask. There is no challenge Americans cannot overcome, no frontier too vast for us to conquer, no dream too bold for us to chase, no horizon too distant for us to claim. For our destiny is written by the hand of providence, and these first 250 years were just the beginning. From the rugged border towns of Texas to the heartland villages of Michigan, from the sun-kissed shores of Florida to the endless fields of the Dakotas, and from the historic streets of Philadelphia to right here in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., the golden age of America is upon us. The revolution that began in 1776 has not ended. It still continues because the flame of liberty and independence still burns in the heart of every American patriot. And our future will be bigger, better, brighter, bolder, and more glorious than ever before. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
That is U.S. President Donald Trump with what was the longest State of the Union address. We had been told it would be long. In fact, some people had suggested it might run longer than it actually did. Medals handed out to a wide variety of Americans, from U.S. goaltender Connor Hellebuck to various military personnel. Lots of guests brought in to underscore the points that the president wanted to make about key things in his agenda. Among those, of course, shutting down the border and the dangers that he would suggest are there for having open borders. And you saw at times tonight, if you sat through the entire speech, some angry reaction, shouting. We couldn't pick up exactly what was said, but by some of the Democrat Congress people, as they clearly were frustrated by what they heard. But also standing ovations, obviously a night of partisan support. And also we anticipated, and I think saw, a potentially awkward moment when he talked about the Supreme Court of the United States and the decision that they made overturning his tariffs. And they were sitting in the front row, stone-faced, as he repeated some of his criticism of the Supreme Court justices. We're live here on CBC News Network, and let's go to Katie Simpson, who is inside the Capitol building. Katie?
Hey, Ian, a number of the U.S. lawmakers who attended this speech, they're now coming out of they're making their way out of the room, and they're all sort of just spilling out into the hallway here, and perhaps one might join us, perhaps not. But Ian, something that, there are a number of things that really stood out about that State of the Union address. One, I don't think that, even though Canadians might be used to hyperbole or exaggeration, misleading or untrue claims from the president, that shouldn't be normalized. And I think we need to point that out off of the top, that quite a bit of what the president did say during that speech, whether it's talking about the economy and inflation, whether it's talking about tariffs, whether it's talking about some of the immigration challenges, whether it's talking about other foreign conflicts, those kinds of things. A lot of it at best is misleading. A lot of it is untrue. So that is one sort of thing that really stands out. But when you watch the speech and you watch the wide shots that showed the members of Congress during this presentation, you saw Republicans standing, enthusiastically cheering, backing the president 100%. And you saw the exact opposite from Democrats, who were sitting there. And it just illustrates the divide that is ripping this country apart right now. And at no moment was it more evident when Donald Trump was talking about immigration. It is an issue that is deeply divisive in America, especially after his immigration enforcement operations were ramped up, particularly in Minneapolis, in the state of Minnesota. And many Americans were deeply upset, many Democrats deeply upset with how those operations were carried out, with the killing of 2 American citizens. It's worth noting Donald Trump did not say the names of Alex Preddy, who was shot and killed by federal agents, or Renee Good, who was also shot and killed by a federal agent. And while he was sort of talking about immigration, where Donald Trump it is a divisive issue in America, Donald Trump asked the room, is it something along the lines of, is America's job to stand up for Americans and not illegal immigrants? And you saw Republicans cheering. It was one of the loudest moments of applause, and Democrats sitting there, and it led to a shouting match between 2 critics, or a number of Donald Trump's critics, who accused him of killing Americans and denouncing the way that he talks about immigration. And that is going to stand out as a moment that will be remembered from this State of the Union address. Don't be surprised. Some of the early analysis is, don't be surprised if Donald Trump uses that in midterm election ads to sort of make the argument, who is standing up for American citizens, because it was such a successful argument during the general election in 2024. So do not be surprised if that is something that is a moment that continues to live on, whether it continues to live on in memes, in social media, those kinds of things. Another moment that really stood out, Ian, is Democratic Representative Al Green. He positioned himself inside the chamber, and he was holding a sign so that when Donald Trump walked down the aisle on his way in to deliver this speech, he opened up his sign, and the sign read, it was a handmade sign that said, "Black people are not apes." That is a reference to the racist video that Donald Trump had posted on Truth Social, the one that Donald Trump did not apologize for, the White House originally blaming a staffer for it being reposted by the president. Representative Green, who has protested and been removed from the chamber before during a similar speech last year, we spoke with him just a short time ago, and he talked about how it's important to take a stand. And when he showed that sign to Donald Trump, he says the president's reaction was he turned away immediately. And that's how Representative Green says he knew that the president saw his message. In our interview with Representative Green, he also had a direct message for Canadians. He commended the Canadian government for taking a stand against Donald Trump. And Ian, as we're talking right now, hold on, I'm just going to pause for a second. A number of the president's cabinet members are making their way out. Our colleague Sylvia is sort of in the middle there. We're trying to get questions to the Trump administration officials who deal with trade, because obviously we want to get to any new information we can about what's the state of the ongoing broader tariff talks, what's the state of talks about the three-way trading deal between Canada, the U.S. and Mexico. And so I'm watching this pack of people sort of make their way slowly down the aisle there. I think it's actually House Speaker Mike Johnson, and that he's pushing through. So I don't think there's anyone. I don't see Sylvia sort of talking to and pulling aside any cabinet members right now. But as we see these scenes moving through, I'm going to stop and acknowledge them, Ian, just in case there is new information I can sort of relay to our viewers. But overall, you know, those are the moments so far that are really going to sort of stand out and resonate. After this speech of the State of the Union, we saw the reaction, and expect the reaction that you saw in the room to be reflected across America because, of course, of the deep polarization in this moment. There was a lot of stuff in there for Donald Trump's base, for the Republicans who support him, the voters that he's going to rely on to ensure that Republicans are reelected, sent back to Congress in the midterm elections this fall, so that he has an easier time continuing to implement his agenda. And we saw that opposition from Democrats who are angry. Some Democrats who didn't even go into the chamber. They're so angry they boycotted the speech. Others who refused to cheer. Others who yelled at the president and heckled him as he was delivering this speech, particularly around some of those divisive issues. So it really sort of illustrates what this moment is like in America in the political landscape.
Katie, you are fantastic at summarizing things live on the fly. You're also fantastic in scrums. So we are going to untether you now from that microphone and let you go out and talk to some of the people and see what you can get for us. And let's bring in our panel who we talked to before the speech. I'm really eager to hear what they have to say after the speech. And so our panelists are Matthew Bartlett, who is a Republican strategist and a former Trump appointee to the State Department. Joel Rubin, a Democratic strategist, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the Obama administration, also the author of the briefing book on Substack, and they've been kind enough to sit through that entire speech and to join us now. And oh, you know what? The Democratic rebuttal has started. We're going to take that and come back to both of you in just a moment.
The people of the Virginia colony gathered here to take on the extraordinary task of governing themselves. Before there was a Declaration of Independence, a Constitution, or a Bill of Rights, there were people in this room. The people who served here ultimately dreamed of what a new nation, unlike anything the world had ever seen, could be. The United States was founded on the idea that ordinary people could reject the unacceptable excesses of poor leadership, band together to demand better of their government, and create a nation that would be an example for the world. And this year, as we celebrate 250 years since America declared our independence from tyranny, I can think of no better place to speak to you as we reflect on the current state of our union. Tonight, as we watched our nation's lawmakers gather for a joint session of Congress, we did not hear the truth from our president. So let's speak plainly and honestly. And let me ask you, the American people watching at home, 3 questions. Is the president working to make life more affordable for you and your family? Is the president working to keep Americans safe both at home and abroad? Is the president working for you? As I campaigned for governor last year, I traveled to every corner of Virginia, and I heard the same pressing concern everywhere. Costs are too high in housing, healthcare, energy, and childcare. And I know these same conversations are being had all across this country. Because since this president took office last year, his reckless trade policies have forced American families to pay more than $1,700 each in tariff costs. Small businesses have suffered, farmers have suffered, some losing entire markets. Everyday Americans are paying the price. And even though the Supreme Court struck these tariffs down 4 days ago, the damage to us, the American people, has already been done. Meanwhile, the president is planning for new tariffs, another massive tax hike on you and your family. And Republicans in Congress, they remain unwilling to assert their constitutional authority to stop him. They're making your life harder. They're making your life more expensive. They're even making it more difficult to see a doctor. Rural health clinics in Virginia and across the country are already closing their doors thanks to the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill, championed by the president and Republicans in Congress. And tonight, the president celebrated this law, the one threatening rural hospitals, stripping health care from millions of Americans and driving up costs in energy and housing, all while cutting food programs for hungry kids. But here in Virginia, I am working with our state legislature to lower costs and make the Commonwealth more affordable. And it's not just me. Democrats across the country are laser focused on affordability in our nation's capital and in state capitals and communities across America. In the most innovative and exceptional nation in the history of the world, Americans deserve to know that their leaders are focused on addressing the problems that keep them up at night. Problems that dictate where you live, whether you can afford to start a business or whether you have to skip a prescription in order to buy groceries. So I'll ask again, is the president working to make life more affordable for you and your family? We all know the answer is no. I grew up in a house of service. My mother was a nurse, and my father was a career law enforcement officer. I began my career by following in my father's footsteps as a federal agent, working money laundering and narcotics cases. I worked side by side with local and state police to keep our community safe and to uphold and enforce the law. Law enforcement officers across the country know that it is a unique responsibility to do the serious work of investigating crimes, comforting victims, and making arrests. It's about building trust, and that requires an abiding sense of duty and commitment to community. And yet, our president has sent poorly trained federal agents into our cities, where they have arrested and detained American citizens and people who aspire to be Americans. And they have done it without a warrant. They have ripped nursing mothers away from their babies. They have sent children, a little boy in a blue bunny hat, children to far-off detention centers. And they have killed American citizens in our streets. And they have done it all with their faces masked from accountability. Every minute spent sowing fear is a minute not spent investigating murders, crimes against children, or the criminals defrauding seniors of their life savings. Our president told us tonight that we are safer because these agents arrest mothers and detain children. Think about that. Our broken immigration system is something to be fixed, not an excuse for unaccountable agents to terrorize our communities. After working in law enforcement, I continued my career of service as a CIA officer, working undercover to protect the United States and our allies from global threats, terrorism, nuclear weapons, and the aggression of adversarial nations around the globe. But as the president spoke of his perceived successes tonight, he continues to cede economic power and technological strength to Russia, bow down to China, bow down to a Russian dictator, and make plans for war with Iran. Here's the truth. Over the last year, through DOGE, mass firings, and the appointment of deeply unserious people to our nation's most serious positions, our president has endangered the long and storied history of the United States of America being a force for good. So I'll ask again, is the president working to keep Americans safe, both at home and abroad? We all know the answer is no. In his speech tonight, the president did what he always does. He lied, he scapegoated, and he distracted. And he offered no real solutions to our nation's pressing challenges, so many of which he is actively making worse. He tries to divide us. He tries to enrage us, to pit us against one another, neighbor against neighbor. And sometimes he succeeds. And so you have to ask, who benefits from his rhetoric, his policies, his actions, the short list of laws he's pushed through this Republican Congress? Somebody must be benefiting. He's enriching himself, his family, his friends. The scale of the corruption is unprecedented. There's the cover-up of the Epstein files, the crypto scams, cozying up to foreign princes for airplanes and billionaires for ballrooms, putting his name and face on buildings all over our nation's capital. This is not what our founders envisioned, not by a long shot. So I'll ask again, is the president working for you? We all know the answer is no. But here's the special thing about America. On our 250th anniversary, we know better than any nation what is possible when ordinary citizens, like those who once dreamed right here in this room, reject the unacceptable and demand more of their government. We see it in the determination of students organizing school walkouts all across the country, whose voices are becoming so powerful that the governor of Texas seeks to silence them. We see it in the bravery of Americans in Minnesota standing up for their communities, from peacefully protesting in sub-zero temperatures to carpooling children to school so that their immigrant parents are not ripped away from them in the parking lot. As a mother of 3 school-aged daughters, I am inspired by their bravery, but I am sickened that it is necessary. And Americans across the country are taking action. They are going to the ballot box to reject this chaos. With their votes, they are writing a new story, a more hopeful story. In November, I won my election by 15 points. And we won 13 new seats in our state legislature. Because voters decided they wanted something different. Our campaign earned votes from Democrats, Republicans, independents, and everyone in between, because they knew as citizens they could demand more, that they could vote for what they believe matters, and that they didn't need to be constrained by a party or political affiliation. This is happening across the country. New Jersey elected Mikey Sherrill as governor in a double-digit victory. Democrats flipped state legislative seats in places like Georgia, Iowa, Mississippi, and Texas. The list goes on and on. Ordinary Americans are stepping up to run in the spirit of our forefathers. They are running to demand more and to do more for their neighbors and communities. I know the story well. I first ran for office in 2018 alongside dozens of other Democrats who did the seemingly impossible, flipping 41 seats in Congress. In my case, I was the first Democrat elected in 50 years, swinging our district 17 points. Those who are stepping up now to run will win in November because Americans, you at home, know you can demand more and that we are working to lower costs. We are working to keep our communities and our country safe, and we are working for you. In his farewell address, George Washington warned us about the possibility of, quote, cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men rising to power. But he also encouraged us, all Americans, to unite in a common cause, to move this nation forward. That is our charge once more, and that is what we are seeing across the country. It is deeply American and patriotic to do so, and it is how we ensure that the state of our union remains strong, not just this year, but for the next 250 years as well, because we, the people, have the power to make change, the power to stand up for what is right, the power to demand more of our nation. May God bless the Commonwealth of Virginia, and may God bless the United States of America.
And that is the rebuttal from the Democratic Party, from the governor of Virginia, Abigail Spanberger. Is the president working for you? Is the question that she asked repeatedly, and maybe we can get a version of the answer to that from our panelists. And Matthew Bartlett is a Republican strategist and a former Trump appointee to the State Department. Joel Rubin, a Democratic strategist, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the Obama administration. And let's go back to the President's State of the Union address, the longest State of the Union address ever. Matthew, let's start with your reaction to what you heard.
Yeah, it was an interesting speech. Probably maybe not like traditional presidents, maybe even not like a traditional Trump speech. This was not a policy prescription for the nation. This was rather a very patriotic, persuasive narrative that the president wanted to give to the nation around our country's founding, and then most importantly around events of the past year, trying to almost give a pep talk to the American public, a feel-good story. I'm sure the Republican Party and his base loves it. I know Democrats were probably apoplectic about some of this, but in terms of, again, recognizing the challenges and constraints in the economy and what the president and party will do in the towards the midterms to improve this situation, I'm not sure we're there. I'm not sure how long the shelf life of this speech will last. Again, it seemed to be much more aimed towards the history books than American pocketbooks.
Joel?
Yeah, Ian, I couldn't decide if I was watching an awards show or an actual speech by an American president to the American people about how he's going to make their lives better. And, that's not to take away from those who won these awards, but it really seems like the president was trying to bask in the glory of those who've been very successful and outstanding in their achievements. And I think that goes to this point we're discussing, which is don't talk about the news if there's no good news. And for President Trump, he barely touched on the economy. In fact, according to some numbers I've been looking at, he spoke for twice as long about national security than he did about the economy. And that just demonstrates that he understands he doesn't have a great hand. He wanted to give some pep talk, but he didn't want to give some detail on how to actually make American lives better in the pocketbook. He doubled down on tariffs. He just kind of left me empty after 2 hours of watching it, wondering what's the next step? What's he going to propose? And I think, to Matt's point, it really wasn't that kind of a speech.
I kind of sense two broad themes as I listened to the speech. For the first portion, not even the first half, less than the first half, there were a lot of boasts about what he feels he had accomplished. Fact checkers busy at CBC and other news organizations, and he talked about reducing the flow of fentanyl, the fact that the border was secure, that inflation is down, that the price of gas is down, mortgage rates down. I won't even put the numbers into that because, as I say, I think the fact checkers will have some questions about the numbers. And then we got to kind of a second broad theme of the speech, which was not just immigration, but it was also demonizing, or people can choose what kind of adjective they want to use, of what he describes as illegal aliens. And it's interesting, when the governor of Virginia gave her rebuttal, she talked about how Trump divides us and enrages us and sometimes succeeds. Matthew, how did you feel about how the president spoke about immigration?
I mean, let's remember this is, one of the president's long-standing issues since coming down the escalator in 2015. I would argue a simmering issue, a legitimate issue that has been boiling in America for decades. And now you have, such an emotional issue exploding with regard to some of the president's tactics, namely ISIS tactics. You're thinking about Minnesota. This goes to how both parties view immigration. One is, a fairness of you do not come to this country illegally. Any other country, you would have the same expectation of removal, of deportation, versus, a notion of vulnerable, those coming in seek of a better life. I think both parties tend to have some truth there, but it's a matter of finding that balance. Which both sides of this pendulum clearly have not done in the previous 4 years, and certainly now in Trump's America, where he's taken one of his largest strengths, immigration, and now turned it into something of a political liability.
Joel, I hate to do this to you, long night, but 30 seconds for a last word to you.
Yeah, look, I think that this is where the president is very vulnerable. And you look at what happened tonight as a comparison. There was an election in the state level in Pennsylvania, and the Democrat won 85 to 15%, outperforming Kamala Harris by over 30 points. So that's where the American people are. And I think the president, he just spoke right past that, and the polling numbers are rough. And I don't think he did enough tonight to shore up those polling numbers.
Joel Rubin, Matthew Bartlett, you're probably seeing on social media. Canadians appreciate your analysis, including some in Canada who know each of you. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks so much.
Pleasure.
All right, let's bring back Katie Simpson. Katie, what do you have for us?
Just actually caught up with U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. He's the Trump administration official who is leading negotiations with Canada, and we just got an update on the status of talks. He says that he's in constant communication with Dominic LeBlanc, and that American trade negotiators are preparing to meet with Canada's new trade negotiator, Janice Charette. But what stands out as news is I was asking him about how things are sort of going, and he talked about how the United States wants to impose some sort of higher tariff on Canada as part of an effort to reshore jobs to America. He started giving me an answer about how if Canada wants to, participate in the reshoring of jobs to America, and I asked him, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, look at other trade deals with other countries, and he suggested that Canada should be open to a higher tariff rate and opening up more Canadian markets, and he specifically cited dairy, and that is something that he would like. So that is some news, Ian, and we've sent all that tape off to Toronto and Vancouver, and so we'll get that on the air as soon as we can.
All right, Katie Simpson, it is fantastic to watch you at work in a situation like this. I'd like to thank all the people, our panelists, Bob Ray, the former Canadian ambassador to the UN, for their help in tonight's coverage. And as Katie points out, our coverage will continue as that tape, as she points out, goes to Vancouver and Toronto. We will have that for you. Radio, of course, will have the latest on this, and CBCNews.ca. But what we're going to do right now, after our live coverage here on CBC News Network from Vancouver, is we are going to connect with the National, with Adrian Arsenault on CBC News Network, which is, we're joining in progress for the second half hour of their program.
States are being paid by Americans.
Lindsay, the speech wasn't entirely about domestic policy. He did veer into foreign policy. When he did that, what stood out to you?
Well, Trump said he stopped 8 wars. We counted 3 conflicts Trump can take credit for stopping. Here they are. But after that, it becomes less clear. Gaza is complicated and fighting continues. Yes, Trump helped broker the peace deal, but it's fragile. Trump is also taking credit for deals he had nothing to do with. India says the Americans weren't part of their peace deal with Pakistan. He can't claim Egypt and Ethiopia because they weren't fighting. Same thing with Serbia and Kosovo. Then there's the deal he brokered between Rwanda and the DRC. It's real, but it doesn't include the most potent rebel group. And of course, the war continues to rage in Ukraine, Adrian. Today marks the 4th anniversary of the start of that conflict. Trump said he would end it within 24 hours of taking office.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. That's Lindsay Duncombe in Vancouver tonight. So let's get back to the U.S. economy. Eli Glasner canvassed some experts for their evaluations of the president's performance so far and looked at the report cards they turned in.
The golden age of America begins right now.
All right, it's been a year since Trump's been back in office, so we're going to do an economic report card of sorts. Just how are Americans doing? We're going to drill down, looking at growth.
Our economy is booming, growth is exploding.
Groceries.
What word have you not heard over the last 2 weeks? Affordability.
Manufacturing.
Thousands of businesses are being built
and the stock market.
Adding $9 trillion in value to retirement accounts.
Eric Talley is a professor of law and business at Columbia University. In terms of the effect on the economy, he rates Trump's first year back a solid B.
There have been aspects of his presidency thus far that have overseen a relatively resilient economy, but along with that is a lot of unpredictability.
When it comes to growth, Trump says the economy is booming. But recent GDP numbers, the rate at which the economy is growing, were sluggish. You see, Wall Street was expecting GDP to come in around 3%, but
this is the first reading of fourth quarter GDP. We came in at 1.4%.
It is a pretty big surprise, particularly given that through the first 3 quarters of 2025, GDP growth was actually pretty good, at least consistent with historical averages. 1.4 is quite low.
One indicator Trump loves to tout is the surging stock market.
I added $9 trillion, and your retirement accounts and 401ks are at the highest level they've ever been.
Earlier this month, the Dow set a new record, crossing 50,000, with the S&P 500 index up 16% and the NASDAQ up 20% at the end of 2025. Matthew Lebo is a political science professor in London, Ontario. He gives Trump the harshest grade.
So his overall grade is an F. He's failing on many major fronts. He's doing permanent damage to the United States in every possible area we could think of, such as trade and security.
With manufacturing employment in the U.S. dropping by 108,000 in 2025, Lebo says Trump needs to look beyond Wall Street.
But wage growth is not going up. A lot of manufacturing jobs have been lost.
Time to turn to one of Trump's least favorite subjects.
And then I have to listen to the fake news talking about affordability.
While the price of eggs has fallen since Trump's been in office, overall food inflation is up 2.9%, with juice up 28% and beef 15%.
Obviously, one of the taglines at the end of the Biden administration is, "Oh my God, have you seen how expensive a carton of eggs is?" Well, now you want to go buy a T-bone. That's really where you're going to take it in the chops, no pun intended.
Barbara Perry is a professor of presidential studies. She gives Trump poor marks when it comes to housing essentials.
That is a D, because for average Americans who supported him, or even those who didn't but hoped that whoever would be president in this term would lower the price of housing and food and fuel.
All right, how about all those tariff-driven manufacturing jobs Trump promised?
Factory construction is up by 41%, and that number is really going to skyrocket right now.
So this is a look at construction spending on manufacturing, basically factories being built or improved, which grew for much of Joe Biden's presidency, but have continued to fall under Trump, down 6.7%.
There have been announcements that some of these international counterparties are going to be investing large amounts of money in the U.S. Most of that still seems to take the form of cheap talk.
And while Trump celebrates the trillions tariffs have brought in,
The tariff is the greatest thing that's happened to this country.
A report from the Tax Foundation says tariffs in 2025 actually cost U.S. households $1,000 each. Add in the cost of the big, beautiful bill, which extended Trump's tax cuts, adding over $4 trillion to the national debt, and Talley wonders what's sustainable.
The U.S. is running an unprecedentedly large deficit, and that will continue. You know, that pot that's in the back of the stove has been turned up to a slow boil, and at some point it could explode.
But with the worst-case debt scenario still far in the future, for the moment, what's growing for U.S. consumers and producers is a sense of concern.
They have been sort of putting out some yellow caution flags and trying to, figure out, okay, look, which way is this economy going? Have we hit this soft landing with the economy, or are we bound to see some more undulation?